Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Wonderful Podcast here on Monday night. Apologies for no heroes tonight. I was out today. I haven't had a chance to make the intro for the tour today, so I just had to use my original one. I'll be back next week, hopefully. So, hope everyone's doing well. Reese will be joining us. Reese is just running a little bit late down to late train, which I've also experienced late trains today, so I know his feeling. We have a lot to talk about. We've got the North London Derby, the Manchester Derby, Bruno Lage sacked, Cardiff City don't have a manager, Chris Wilder sacked, Champions League. There's so much to talk about. This absolutely goes on. So then there's absolutely started. So you got Nathan here in a nice light blue LED lighting type of thing. Really nice looking. How you doing, Nathan?
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on as usual. Just if anyone's wondering, bear with my webcam. It looks absolutely dreadful. I got a new router. I got LED lights everywhere. I forgot to link up my key light to my internet, so it's not working at the moment. That's going to be fun to do. And yeah, I look white as anything. And yeah, Cardiff City. At least we're living in Swansea's mines rent-free, aren't we? Thanks for having me on as usual.
Helly, as far as I know from my side of things, everything is running fine. As long as probably someone do if you're just probably reset the app or something like along those lines, to reset your device if you're watching this on a phone or a computer. And then in the bottom we have got George. Obviously George from a big defeat over the weekend, which we'll go into more detail right. But other than that, George, how you doing?
Yep, very good, Josh. Thank you for having me as always, and yeah, looking forward to getting into it as well. Obviously, first podcast back for a little while. Obviously with the death of Her Majesty, and of course the international break. But yeah, good to be back. But at the same time, obviously, as you said, just disappointing result against the reigning champions.
The host tax report will set up the queue.
I know how to do it, but it's just such a long job. Oh, it's going to take ages.
All right, so
I'll do it at some point.
It's difficult to know where to start, but I think there's only one place to start. Let's talk about the man who did lose his job yesterday. Bruno Lage sacked as Wolves manager. We talked about this on our last show 2 weeks ago, where I didn't mention Reese. I think Reese is still on the train. Yeah, I said his train was running late, so I do think he is back in. It's moving again. Happy days. So we spoke on the show just 2 weeks ago about how we think Bruno Lage was under pressure. I thought Bruno Lage was under pressure. Everyone else disagreed. Everyone thought he had time in the job. He was CFO. Was the only one who had any sort of ideas. That I was the only one. He said, I thought he was under pressure. Obviously, they lost to 2-0 to West Ham there at the weekend, and Bruno Lage leaves the job. They've won one game in their last 15, only scoring 3 goals. It's been quite glim and dim. George probably jumped he was given the right amount of time, but Liverpool squad isn't that good at the same time, you see. So what do you think? Do you think Bruno Lage was overachieving with a bad squad, or do you think the sack justified in the end?
I think ultimately, I still think it was far too soon for Lage to get sacked. I think that was obviously when you are quite right. You did sort of mention it a few weeks ago, obviously when we last convened for the podcast. But even then, I still thought it was too soon. And it's not as if, as we all sort of spoke about with regarding the long break that we've had, it's not even as if he's had a lot of games where results have worsened even more, and they've sort of come thick and fast. It's actually been a long sort of break. So potentially the Wolves hierarchy were already thinking a bit like you were that his days were numbered, and this was sort of the final straw that broke the camel's back was this defeat to West Ham. But I think again, with Wolves, and you sort of mentioned it again in terms of statistically, their issue has always been their profligacy in front of goal. They've not really got someone who's a recognised goal poacher or real goal threat, someone who's guaranteed goals, and that's always a big sort of issue and worry, especially when because in those sort of regards you'll need then lots of players to sort of chip in with the odd goal, but that clearly hasn't been happening. And again, obviously against West Ham, missing mystical up chances. Obviously, your old friend Diego Costa, in particular, a header that in his glory days he would have banged into the corner, but to no avail. Obviously, now a few years past his sell-by date, so to speak. But yeah, Wolves. It's a shame for me because I think Bruno Lage did an excellent job last season. I think he deserved credit for that and should have been given a bit more of a stay of execution, really, in a few more matches. I think symptomatic rather of his demise was the sort of downturn in form of Jose Sarr. A lot of us had him in our team of the season last season. Statistically, he was absolutely integral to Wolves' upsurge and their eventual placing quite high, obviously, in the table. But again, he's really dropped off this season. There were a few opportunities as well that West Ham had where his handling wasn't exactly the best. So yeah, as I said, he's sort of like in a microcosm, symptomatic of Wolves' troubles. Keeping opposition out, but like I said, there's also that fact that they've not got this recognised goal scorer. The two most important areas of a football field, obviously, are keeping opposition out, obviously clean sheets and scoring goals, and they've really struggling in both departments currently. But I think it'll be interesting now to see who gets that Wolves job, because they're going to expect. I'm not even sure quite what Wolves board and hierarchy expect, because like I said, Lage I think had been doing a good job last season, but yeah, it's sadly it's curtains for him. But I'm sure he'll get another good job as well, because he's a good manager nevertheless.
Let's go to a man who has got bad owners and he has seen his squad digress big time from a few years ago. When you look at this Wolves team in the Championship when they came up to the Premiership, they had a really, really good squad. Right? They had a good core, they had perfect style. But over these last 2 years, probably the Bruno Lage years, this squad has dramatically lost a lot of key players. For example, against West Ham, they were having to play Ruben Neves at centre back, which and that's after selling Willy Bolly and Conor Cody, who's doing excellently at Wolves. Do the owners have to play a part of responsibility for not investing? They spent 150 million, I think, in the window, but you look at the players, there's no real star quality players they've signed. So do the Wolves owners take a part of responsibility for making this squad not as good to work with as what it was when Sainouda got sacked?
For me, I completely disagree with that statement. I mean, look at the position that they were in before Fossen took over. They just come up from League One. They stabled in the Championship about 15th or 16th, and they were in dire straits. But the second they were in, loads of money got pumped in. They linked in with Jorge Mendes, the super agent, straight into the Premier League, and then straight into Europe. That is unheard of, straight off the bat. And even then, ever since they've been there, the amount of money that their Chinese owners are pumping into the club is absolutely obscene. I mean, it's literally borderline breaking FFP rules. And yeah, they are still investing. But the thing you've got to look at is it's not the owners' involvement at all from where the failure has happened this season and last season as well. It's sort of the director of football role, and also who, for example, Bruno Lage has also brought in. They've lost the crucial players that Nuno Espirito Santo and Jorge Mendes scouted really well, but they haven't reinforced and gotten and used his contact book correctly and brought in the right players for me. I think the Wolves owners are doing an absolutely spectacular job, which pains me to say it because I can't stand that club for obvious reasons. But like with so many clubs across the 92, they would absolutely bite your arm off for Wolves' owners. And if from where they were in the Championship in 2017, the second they went up and the second that they finished 7th the following season, I was like, this team is going to be in the Champions League, give it about 5 years, and they are going to be contending for titles. They've got them in the right place. They need to make sure that they retain there. And the owners have got the right structure. They're going to keep reinvesting. They're going to they are rebuilding the stadium. They're in the process of that. upgrading their training grounds, building these relations, building a ridiculous coaching academy. They're going to be like a mini PSG and Man City with the way they're going. At the end of the day, Manchester City, they weren't built overnight. It's going to be the same with Wolves. Like, look how many years it took for Man City to get to be champions. It took them quite a few, and with reinvestment, and to get the Etihad campus built. It's the same with many other clubs as well. It would be the same with Newcastle. But at the end of the day, they need to get this appointment right for me. But with the owners taking a sense of responsibility, that doesn't sit right.
Do you think? Do you think you mentioned all the money has to be invested into outside the first team? Do you think the first team then, like similar to Spurs, for example, Spurs had to suffer for a while because the amount of money they had went to the stadium rebuild? You think Wolves are the team if they're so? Do you think it's like short term game for this first team for all stuff they're building around outside it, which will effectively come in getting long term?
I don't think so. No, because even then they have been spending money in the transfer window. It's just the manner in which they have and who they have sort of bought in and stuff. At the end of the day, you can still make free transfers. You can still use Jorge Mendes' contact book. He'll find some great Portuguese talent, some great free transfers, even across the whole of Europe. He can bring the players in, but at the end of the day, it is down to Bruno Lage, it's down to their director of football, and it's down to their coaches and everything to ensure that the right players are brought in. If they haven't done that, then the owners are going to look to this group for responsibility. Like the owners have passed it out of their hands, Fossen have. If they don't get it right, then it's right for them to be moved on. But at some point you have got to look at the infrastructure and looking at it from the other point of view. And considering how well they have been in the Premier League for the last couple of years, some of the Wolves fans would probably be happy. Like, look, if we spend a few years finishing mid-table, maybe a bit lower, get the infrastructure behind the scenes improved, it's already there, but if it can be better when we can push into Europa League and then Champions League, then we should be a way to go. But it's an and a really, and they just got to make sure that they get the right appointment next. Perfect, really.
So, and the next manager who lost their job was obviously Chris Wilder and Middlesbrough. Nathan, what's your opinion on that one?
I'm split. First instinct from when he did get sacked was, okay, I thought it was a bit harsh, but looking at the squad that they have, some of the results that they have been losing, like, for example, losing to us, just leaking goals, picking up the wins where it's required, but at the end of the day, they're in the bottom three. With the amount that they've invested and turned it around from last season, they should not be anywhere near 22nd in the table. Like, so if we get their first team squad up, yes, some improvements are needed. Like, but at the end of the day, they got the right foundations there. Muniz and Duncan Watmore is a great partnership up front. Alex Mowatt's a superb midfielder in the middle. Boller and Smith, great as wing backs, and then the likes of Matlock and Deutschsteel at the back. It's got the foundations there. It does need a little bit extra, but at the end of the day, they should be nowhere near where they were. If anything, I'd say top 12, good season. Like, even their bench is just superb. Ryan Giles, McGree, Paddy McNair, Chuba Akpon, who's I really rate as a player. They have been underachieving, but with the lack of managers that are currently out there, I would have given Wilder till Christmas for me. I do think they pulled the plug way too early on him. And he's just going to go to another championship club, a rival, in fact. And then Wilder's just going to rocket them up the league, which is what happened with Middlesbrough at the start until they ended up dropping off.
George, what's your opinion on it?
Not much I can add really to what Nathan said. Obviously, Nathan's, sort of knows the championship inside and out. Wilder's always seemed to me a good manager, and ultimately for me, I think as he sort of said, he probably did deserve a bit more time. I feel like that's almost the case with pretty much every sort of manager I feel like every club now, I suppose obviously because of the financial implications of where you can obviously get relegated or what can happen, that every club now is so trigger happy. And I feel, that's why I'm always sort of sympathetic and always, sort of trying to say that managers do deserve more time. I think at this stage of the season, there's absolutely no point in doing it again. Because there's still so much football to play, and I feel like that Christmas period, that's when you sort of look for me. And I suppose maybe a lot of people then would say, well, then you're sort of you're sort of compounding things, because that should be a happy time for whichever manager it is, and then of course they get sacked at Christmas and they're absolutely miserable during a festive period. But so I suppose the devil's advocate would say that, but for me, managers do in general deserve more time. And like I said, Wilder for me is actually a relatively good manager. So he should have got more time in my opinion as well.
Absolutely. And like I said earlier, alluding to it, is Middlesbrough in a way shot themselves in the foot, because lots of as you've seen, so many is trigger happy this season, and the way that it's going, because it's like a merry-go-round. So one's going from there to there. For example, one's gone from Rotherham made a step down to Derby and rejected Cardiff. Absolutely hilarious at this point. And they're just going to shoot themselves in the foot, because Wilder's going to go to a rival and he'll propel them up the league. And then they're going to end up with someone who they're just going to get a massive downgrade and stay in the bottom half of the table. And I've got a feeling it's going to also happen to West Brom when they end up getting rid of Steve Bruce.
So let's move on to the Premier League game. So let's start off with the North London Derby. A game that, George, did you see this North London Derby? Yes, you did. Nathan, did you see it or watch any highlights?
It wasn't. I've seen snippets of it because it was on BT and it was on the way to the Cardiff game. But I've been keeping tabs on it.
The way I've seen this game was, first of all, I thought Arsenal were quite good. To be fair, Arsenal came over the right intensity. I thought their midfield, I thought Partey and Xhaka were fantastic. Martinelli was good. Jesus was a distance all game. But I feel like the biggest issue for me with that game was how bad Spurs were and how negatively Antonio Conte set them up. Like, I knew Spurs were going to go into this game and step back and counter-attack, but they were ridiculously deep. Like, that first goal, if you're putting any sort of pressure on the ball, Thomas Partey doesn't get that strike off and Arsenal don't score that game. It was high little pressure. Both goals, if Spurs were putting any sort of pressure onto Arsenal, both goals were not scored for Arsenal. So I feel like Antonio Conte's setup was too negative. They were also too wasteful. They had some really good chances on the counter-attack. Should have played some neat stuff. Extremely wasteful. I thought Son was not particularly very good, especially that final ball. Emerson Royale's tackle was Hilarious. Emerson Royale's tackle was absolutely awful. Considering Martinelli was going back to his own goal, there was no danger, there was nobody to go in like that. So I feel like players' decision making and players' decisions, but as well as just how negative Antonio Conte. There was just all they wanted to do was sit in their shame and defend their box. There was no idea to put any pressure on the ball. There was no idea to be aggressive, and it just let Arsenal go into the game at home, which I think is a completely wrong thing you do in a derby. So I was extremely disappointed from Antonio Conte in that aspect. George, since you've seen the game, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's sort of quite a fair analysis. Yeah, as you said, I did watch the entire game. Postponed my cinema trip for a few hours in order to do so, because I thought it would be quite a decent match, and so it proved. To be honest with you, as you sort of said about Spurs, I think you've sort of hit the nail on the head. I think Son in particular, I'm a big fan of his, but in that match he was absolute shit, to put it bluntly. Every single ball, it seemed like, even the simple balls where they could have got in behind, because again Arsenal had sort of pressed up poorly, he just kept on messing up. It was almost as though it was just a diabolical game for him, really. And I also thought, to be honest with you, I actually thought that Spurs had a lot of control in that game until that sending off. I feel like Spurs were very much, it was sort of like the typical Conte game where I sort of pre-match I sort of said that there's probably no way that Conte will lose this match. And I should have added really without a sending off, because to be honest with you, Conte's sort of the master, as we've seen already with Spurs over the past year or so. Obviously, when he's been in charge, he's the master in these big games of making sure he doesn't lose. He's either wins or draws. That's what he tends to pick up against the rest of the big six, and that's because he is this master of staying in games. And obviously, he's got that front three. Or front four now, obviously with Richarlison, who are able to score in those big moments. And it just seemed to me though that Spurs were slightly too cautious and pragmatic in the sense that it felt like they could hurt Arsenal whenever they wanted. That was what it felt like to me, and it was just they didn't want to until they got stung into action by the first goal, obviously, which was the Partey screamer, and obviously the second goal, which was some of the worst keeping I've ever seen from Hugo Lloris, which allowed Jesus to score. Arsenal were good, but Spurs were sort of the architects of their own downfall in the sense that, again, Hugo Lloris had a real shocker of a game. His handling was piss poor, and again, obviously Jesus again he sort of like. It sort of sums up what I always say about Jesus, which is the sort of reason why City have eventually got Haaland, of course, and he's had to sort of move on, which is that he's not very clinical. He's a phenomenal player, Jesus, in so many ways. He's a real technician. He's quite a brainy footballer. He's a good player to watch. But in terms of that sort of end product, again, there were a few opportunities that he had to sort of extend Arsenal's lead and just failed to with some pretty poor finishing. Obviously, Spurs, like I said, always had the opportunity. I mean, even that sort of penalty that they won, obviously with the Richarlison being tripped over by Gabriel, that was from a shit. Richarlison had to make do out of a shit on ball again. It was sort of head off, after another one of his terrible balls and managed to make something of it. And of course, Kane, as usual, he's the ultimate penalty taker in some ways because he's most of his goals are penalties. So there's 8 out of 14 in derbies, North London derbies. His goals have been penalties, and even at England, his penalty percentage of his goals is something ridiculous, like 25% or something. So, which just shows the way the game's going. But yeah, at that point, I thought Spurs were very much in it. Second goal, like I said, piss poor by Lloris, but they're still in it. I feel like at that point, and obviously Spurs as I said, they were stung into action. They were really pressing for equaliser. Emerson Royale, fuck knows what he was doing. I actually do think that's a yellow card. Slightly controversial though that may seem. Brain dead it was, obviously, to make that challenge, but it feels to me that it wasn't. It wasn't something which was horrendous. For me, that's obviously ruined the game entirely. Albeit, like I said, it's just that one thing about referees and consistency. If they decide that they're going to punish every single brain dead thing with a red card, then they should be a lot more consistent across the board. I mean, Thiago Silva, obviously, just briefly touching on your game, obviously, Josh, with that fucking ridiculous bit of volleyball. For me, that's a red card as well. If you're going on sort of the things of brain dead or gamesmanship or something like that, that's the sort of thing that if you're going to give red cards for what Emerson did, you're also going to give red cards for that, and and obviously the red card as well in the Fulham game. That was very similar in the case of a reckless challenge, but which looked worse, obviously, in slow motion. And it's all about where the player hits the other player. So on the Martinelli one, it hit him just above the ankle, and of course, when it hit him just above the ankle, that's when it's always obviously it's leg breaker or going to cause horrendous injury. So automatically, it's like, oh god, it's got to be a red no matter what. But for me, that was a yellow. Xhaka obviously got his obligatory goal to seal things off. Eric Dyer again, fucking Bambi on ice, terrible footballer, got sold so easily. But obviously Arsenal, good win for them. Stay top of the table. The more the weeks go on, some of their fans will start talking of title races. Still a bit premature, I think, at this moment. But as we sort of spoke about previously, I think the international, obviously with the World Cup, that's going to help Arsenal considerably, given their squad lack of depth. And there's no reason why they can't push for at least top 4 now as well at this stage. But yeah, a long way of the season to go. Spurs need to have some good reflections. I think Conte, obviously disciplinarian that he is, he'll obviously read them the right act and really sort of improve their performance. But there's not a lot he could do either, because as soon as someone gets sent off, obviously the game's totally gone. And obviously that was what necessitated those four subs by him. But yeah, the game was ruined, I think, by that red card. Like I said, you can either some people argue red, some people argue yellow. But one thing for sure, the game was fully gone with that decision, because Arsenal were always going to win at that junction, especially with the two, being 2-1 up. But fantastic game, and I'm glad I watched it.
Nathan, should Spurs be disappointed considering if they won this game? Obviously, it's a derby. They would have won top of the league if they won this game. Should they be disappointed that how badly they performed, and maybe that Antonio Conte was just too reliant and too comfortable with how deep he decided to sit in a North London derby?
I think it was just an aspect of complacency, really. Conte saw how well Arsenal were doing. It looks like he just set up for 1-0 smash and grab, or just settling for a draw to keep the fans happy. Play too negative. Arsenal, look at the way that they set up. Just completely going full pace. I mean, a front four of Saka, Odegaard, Martinelli, and Gabriel Jesus against a back four, a back three of Longley, Dyer, and Romeo, who was going to come out on top of that? Just Spurs completely setting up defensively, parking the bus, looking for a your 1-0s, just long balling it through and then sitting back for the whole game. And Arsenal were looking to move it progressively forwards. And it didn't help at all with Emerson and that absolutely stupid red card. I mean, yes, it was in a derby, but to let your team down like that is just obscene. Because then they had to change the system, going into basically one in midfield, you could say, and it was just absolute disaster for him. He's got a lot to learn.
All I can think of, I remember seeing this animated thing on TikTok where Spurs were sitting in the trenches, and then Arteta just said charge, and the whole Arsenal team started running towards the Spurs trenches. Antonio Conte just picked his head up with a white flag, and then you just see all the defenders come up and stand up with waving white flags. It was great. It was like a perfect animation. Anyway, let's go down to Mr. Controversial, the beast from the east, the Scottish madman. His name is Reese. What do you think about the North London derby?
Didn't watch it.
All right. Anyway, okay. Well. I want to quickly ask you, since you missed the conversation on Bruno Lage. What did you think about Bruno Lage's sacking yesterday morning from Wolves?
I stand by what I said last week and the week before. I think it's a pathetic decision by them. Like, regardless of how results are going, I think it's. I'm going to use an exact word that George has just used: premature. Like, we all know Wolves are very premature when it comes to finishing, but it's clear in this case they're premature in making decisions. I think they've got this wrong. First you bring in Sasa Klatsic to replace Raul Jimenez because you expect Raul Jimenez to get injured. Unfortunately, but it's true. Raul Jimenez is on the decline, but he still gets you at least 10 goals a season. He then gets a very serious injury in his first game against Southampton. He's fucked. So you bring in Diego Costa, a shithouse striker who's about 34, 35. He ain't going to start every game, but he actually suits your system because one thing Wolves are really good at is long ball and counter pressing. You can at least get a counter attack goal off with Diego Costa, and you can shithouse back fours. The problem is they're relying on they've lost. I said it when he went to Everton. Connor Cody's a massive benefit for Everton. It's a massive loss for Wolves, and it's already.
The question is as well, who have they replaced him with?
No one.
That's the thing. I still even think they haven't even replaced Matt Doherty either from a few years ago.
Exactly. Like Yanni's having a poor season. Poor time actually. I haven't seen him play well in about a year and a half. I think his injuries have really caught him, and he's not playing well as a wing back. And it's no surprise that I don't even know who they play on the left hand side. Like for Wolves anymore, I don't know who plays there. Nelson Semedo is pish. I said it to Wolves fans when Barcelona said to Wolves fans, fun enough on social media that I seen because they were celebrating the sign them. I was like, Barcelona have literally just fucking celebrated your demise. I was like, Barcelona have just got rid of a shit right back. You're going to play wing back. And they're like, nah, you're being too harsh. Me harsh? When am I ever harsh? Come on, I'm not harsh. I'm just deadly honest. Leicester. Yes, but I genuinely don't think they've thought this through because there's no other managers that are going to take this job. I think the only good manager you may have got is, funnily enough, now at Brighton. De Sherby, like he's doing really well. Fun enough, Sassuolo won 5-0 last night when first game since they got rid of him. I mean, that's quite funny. But Pochettino's not going to go there. Brendan Rodgers is still on a job. I don't see anyone respectfully that's going to go there. They're not going to get Nuno back because, with all due respect, I think he will be smart about this. I think looking how he is, he will be smart. If Wolves go back in for him, he'll say no because it's out of loyalty, and also he's already had a good history there. It didn't end well for him. I don't think he would want to jeopardise that any further. In the squad, they're relying on João Moutinho. All credit to him, he's a decent midfielder, but his age is catching up to him in the Premier League. Ruben Neves is not in the best of form. Dundonker's not in the best of form. Willy Bolly.
He's not even there anymore. He's not there anymore. He got sold.
Exactly. That's another replacement. I just don't see where they go from here. And attacking options as well. It's a mess, and I feel sorry for him. I I think they've acted far too premature. They should have waited till the end of the season. They should have let him see it out. Because if anything, he done well with them last year. They just missed out in Europe. Just because they started badly doesn't mean they should have sacked him. They've acted like Watford. They've acted like Fulham. Fucking idiots. Straight up, Wolves are fucking idiots, and I hope they get relegated for it.
Like if I jump on here,
go for it.
just with who are they being linked with? They're all from abroad. Like favorite at the moment is Ruben Amorim. I hope I've said that right. From Sporting.
There's no way they're getting him. He will
There's
tell
no
them
chance.
fuck off. He's busy coaching Sporting Lisbon.
And then number 2 is Julian Lopetegui from Sevilla. Are they having a laugh? Are they having a laugh?
Right, with all due respect, I like Lopetegui, but that is suicide.
Exactly.
Like, if he goes there from Sevilla, he is absolutely stupid because he has to fix his career at Sevilla first. He needs to turn around after the performance there against Atletico on Saturday. Like, he's a decent manager, but nah, I think that's a massive mistake.
It is stupid, absolutely stupid. And then next couple, Pedro Martins from Olympiacos. Cannot see that happening at all because
Next.
Yeah, the owners will just keep him there. This makes me laugh. Andre Villas-Boas.
That doesn't make me laugh. If anything, you know what? Actually, I don't know what George thinks, but you know what? Actually, considering the fact it didn't work well at Chelsea, but the way he played at Spurs, he actually made Gareth Bale a world-class player, which is funny. When you actually think of that, Gareth Bale's world-class because of Andre Villas-Boas. He played a brilliant back three in France until things didn't end well, and then they brought in Jorge Sampaoli, who's another decent manager. Actually, I think they should look at. I think AVB is actually a smart choice. He knows the league well, and a club like Wolves, limited budget, but it's Portuguese players.
Yep.
I actually think that wouldn't be a bad option. I think that's one they should go at.
That is true. And the interesting thing is, guess who he's pretty much tied odds with? Sean Dyche. Which I think would be a complete disaster.
Oh, go for the smart option. Go for Villas-Boas. At least Chelsea fans can get humped after.
Okay.
George is like, actually, you think about it.
I just want to say I do apologise for my poor lightning. I decided to turn on obviously the Leicester Forest game on my other screen, which was generated on my big bright light. I live in darkness for this podcast. Let's move on to the Manchester derby from North London down to Manchester. The 6-3. The 6-3 humiliating defeat for Manchester United in a probably going to next week footballing lesson once again for Man City. A Hurling hat-trick, which the guy's a joke. The guy's a joke. He's a life back. He generally shouldn't be allowed to play football. But yeah, Reece and George. I'm going to give this to George because I know George will probably have a fair lengthy assessment of it. So we'll go to Reece first. How do you sum up a game? Was Ten Hag too attacking? Maybe not playing Casemiro was the wrong decision. Was it just City are too good? What do you think?
Well, there's a lot of factors, but I think the one thing is, I get Ten Hag's approach. He wanted to prove himself as a manager against the best club in English football, probably the second best club in Europe behind Real Madrid. But as much as he wanted to do this approach, he got it wrong. He should have, in my opinion, done the exact same approach against Arsenal. He should have sat deep, let City have the much possession as they wanted, and any opportunity space comes in, attack at pace. The problem that we had is every opportunity we tried to attack, the first touches were completely shocking. The first touches on like several attacking players were not great. The midfield, I have watched Eriksen play since 2010. And that is the worst performance I've ever seen of Christian Eriksen in my life. I have never seen him so shite in professional football. He was our worst player, and that is saying something. He was our worst player. Possession, dispossessed. He was at fault for the first 3 goals. And to me, I'm not going to put all the blame on him in the last 3 because he wasn't even involved. But he had no sink in the midfield. McTominay resorted to type. He got suspended for fucking nothing. Wanker. But I'm just looking at the fullbacks weren't great as well. Lisandro Martinez again was having to cover Varane. Varane, to be fair to him, I'm saying it to my dad yesterday because unfortunately he's a City fan. He was like, "Oh, Varane's your best defender." I was like, "No, it's Martinez." Like, Varane's just lucky that he didn't get injured, and then he gets fucking injured. De Gea, it says it all when De Gea is one of your best players in a shit performance. When Malacia looked out of sorts, like his position and his tracking, he was left for dead against Phil Foden. even when Mahrez came on, like against Luke Shaw, they just could not cope with attacking play. And the system, to be fair, was all wrong. We just did not have that focal point. I think Casemiro, yes, if you're going to play players in form, I get that. But in a game like this, where it's crunch time, where we're trying to get to the top four, I would have personally played Casemiro. I think in this game where you need experience in the second half, you can bring on the legs of McTominay or you can bring on the creativity of Christian Eriksen if you wanted to, then fine, I would have done that. And another thing as well is like, and he didn't ghost in the sense of it, but Bruno Fernandes was nowhere to be seen. And it wasn't even his fault. We didn't even get the ball to him once. Like, an attacking player of his quality, where yes, he has moments where he tracks back like 60 yards to pick up the ball. He couldn't even get that sort of space to even move. We didn't play him enough. Anthony wasn't tracking back in the first half. That was really disappointing. The second half he did, to be fair. Marcus Rashford, yes, we've missed his movement up front. His first touch was awful. But I don't think he should have came off. I think Jadon Sancho should have came off. I don't think Sancho had... I think Sancho was the worst at the front three. Ronaldo looked absolutely bored to his tits. Don't blame him. But then again, Martial came on and got 2 goals. That scoreline says 6-3, but it's still 6-1 to me. Because there's 2 goals City gave up. They couldn't be arsed. It was 6-1 with just two bonus balls. It's basically playing the Thunderball on a Friday night. That's what we had. We had 2 bonus balls. That's pretty much summed up, mate. We were shite, and I take it as that it's the best team in England, second best team in Europe. I've moved on because I said draw. Some people had us getting a win. I don't know where the win was coming from. Maybe on countdown, but we were lucky to score 3 goals. We didn't deserve any of them, apart from Anthony's goal. That was a beauty. We were shit.
Let's move on to Radar. George Kyle, over to you.
Yeah, to be honest with you, it was very, very poor. From start to finish. Ultimate lack of composure. I think Erik ten Hag had actually, to be honest with you, had quite a good and fair post-match analysis in terms of in the moments that we had the ball, we weren't composed enough. Eriksen, obviously, and McTominay were very, very poor in terms of their ball play. Eriksen in particular was very, very poor indeed. I actually thought Varane and Martinez, surprisingly enough, Varane got injured at a crucial moment. Of course, the second goal, he wasn't even on the pitch, which caused a massive havoc because there was an error, which meant Eriksen had to pick up Haaland, obviously, for that corner. And the third goal, I felt like the City's third goal was just world class. I don't. Obviously, De Gea got a bit of criticism. I've seen now on social media today when everyone sort of said, "Oh, we should be coming for it," but actually, of all the goals that Man City scored, I think that third goal was the one that there was probably nothing they could do about it. That was just world-class play by De Bruyne and Erling Haaland. First goal, piss poor by Eriksen. He should have tracked back with Phil Foden. He actually, someone else, a fan cam I watched, I won't sort of go into it, sort of said that Eriksen was supposed to be marking other players, but actually when I froze the frame at the exact moment that Foden was going to get the ball, Eriksen had fuck all. No player did Eriksen have to cover apart from Foden, so he should have tracked him and should have got back. De Gea again obviously was poor in terms of his distribution, really, really bad this time. But again, it was sort of symptomatic of the fact of how poor the team were playing. Everyone knows my feelings on him in a way, so no real need to go any further on that. I thought the fullbacks were absolutely terrible. Dalot in particular, I've sort of called him, I've given him the sort of nickname of dishcloth because he gets rinsed all the time, which has kind of sort of, worn off a bit over the recent weeks. But I think, much as we might sort of castigate Jack Grealish, I actually think he's quite a good player. And I feel like he showed it again. He was sort of terrorising Dalot, got him a yellow card within about a minute flat, which meant he had to walk on a tightrope the entire game. Malacia was unfortunate with his yellow card. I think it was a shit control by Rashford. I think it was that he had to sort of make the challenge. But yeah, strange enough, the sort of main crux I was coming to in that specific point was that I felt like Varane and Martinez were actually playing well. It felt to me that it was just no help from midfield. Like I said, McTominay and Eriksen were shocking. The two fullbacks were really, really poor, and that's where all the goals were sort of coming from. So which was a real sort of shame. And of course, yeah, as I said, the Haaland goal happened when Varane wasn't on the pitch. And then obviously a third goal, like I said, nothing you can do with that. So, yeah, it's obviously a set-piece coach. I would say, though, Eric Ramsey, he's a fucking waste of space, which I say pretty much every week since we've hired him. Another goal conceded by a set-piece. Wonderful goal by Anthony. Edison obviously is, as we all know anyway. We all know this. Anyone who watches football knows that Edison couldn't save a Word document. He's absolute shit. There's some sort of statistic where he's conceded like the last 7 of the 9 shots he's had on target, which just shows Edison can't save anything. He's terrible. But obviously it was a good goal by Anthony. Pleased for Anthony Martial. Big fan of his. I think he's important for us. Just a shame he can never stay fit. He does seem to have actually been improving under Ten Hag, because obviously the substitute appearance he had against Liverpool, he was our best player in that second half against them, and he was actually very good against City. Obviously, with those, the penalty was absolutely superb. No keeper in the world is going to save that in that top corner, and obviously did well for following him for the second goal. Haaland, obviously, I know you were sort of speaking about this, Josh, that he's a joke. There's this sort of narrative that he's unstoppable as a joke. In actuality, yes, he's a very good finisher. But for me, it was always key about stopping the supply to him. I think that's the key attribute that we sort of missed out on, which Casemiro would have aided in, because obviously he's a certified destroyer and superb central defensive midfielder. So he would have helped in trying to cut out the supply train to him, because that is what's key with Haaland. He will score if you give him the opportunities, and we gave him far too many. And he was obviously clinical with it, but like I said, it's about stopping the supply, and that's the unfortunate thing. Obviously, with City, he's being supplied so readily by so many different players that it's almost he's got so many opportunities to score. And to be honest with you, if Ronaldo had made a more pragmatic decision and gone to City last summer, then obviously he would still be scoring as many goals as Haaland was scoring, because he's just getting the opportunities that Ronaldo would also have. All Haaland's got to do pretty much on most of his goals is just get a yard on his defender, and the City players are good enough that they'll find him. And that's obviously what Ronaldo's been an expert at doing for the last 15, 20 years. So, as I said, I don't buy into this narrative that Haaland's unstoppable. I feel like City are when they're in the mood, and when you don't put in the work or the effort to actually track them. I think City have had a few poor results this season when teams have actually been disciplined and followed men and stuff like that. And it's just the sort of simple basics, which again, Man United were terrible at. And again, obviously, Ten Hag spoke to this when he sort of said about this lack of confidence. But I think that is the basic thing, is the mentality of these players, which we already know anyway. I mean, all of us know from years of discussing it, even under Ole and even further back, obviously Mourinho, Van Gaal, those sort of people. It's just this bottling mentality. Ultimately, it's just this lack of composure, lack of winning killer mentality, which you have to have at the highest level, especially against, obviously, as Reece has sort of said, a top team like Man City. But yeah, really disappointing. The most disappointing thing for me was obviously was letting Foden score a hat trick, because I think he's actually not very good, and that just shows how bad we are that Foden was able to get that. It's not so bad when it's Haaland, because he's sort of this generational striker, but when it's fucking Foden, that's what really pisses me off as well. But obviously with the hat tricks. But what I would say, obviously, and that's a bit like what Reece is saying, was that it's against City, and you kind of, I think it's almost like a free hit sometimes, because City will, are probably going to win the league again this season. Now, I think after the last few matches and so forth, but that is only 6 points of an available 114 in a season. So it's almost as though we can, relatively speaking, afford to lose those 2 matches as long as you still perform against other teams. And that's what this first sort of formulative season, this first initial season for Erik Ten Hag, if we want to try and get in the top 4, which is sort of the basic, I think, objective this season, we need to just try and beat every other team apart from Man City, because and then obviously try and have a free hit of them, obviously, at Old Trafford when we have the reverse fixture. But it's more important, I think, to beat all these other teams as well, which we have had a good spell at. And the very final thing I would say before we sort of move on, because I'm aware that I've gone on for a slightly long, but obviously that's because it's about United, is that I would make whole scale changes in terms of the formate, the sounds of the team. I think it's obviously going to be quite difficult. De Gea's got to stay in goal, because we've not really got a replacement for him. I would maybe give Dubravka a chance, but I don't think Erik Ten Hag should do that. Yeah, I think Dalot, obviously, we've not really got an opportunity to swap him out, even though he was crap, because, again, there's lack of opportunities. Maybe give Shaw a go instead of Malacia. Varane and Martinez, hopefully both of them are fit, because, like I said, I didn't feel like they did too much wrong. In that, much as it might be said that we conceded that many goals, it was more from, like I said, from the fullbacks and midfielders not tracking fucking runners. And midfield wise, I'd let Fred and Casemiro go in. And actually, sorry, I would just say this at this point as well. There's one player I haven't mentioned, which Reece did mention, who was absolute shit, which was Bruno. we've seen this with Bruno far too often. We actually lost a Europa League final. Right, no, not obviously Ollie was a major part as well, but Bruno was a big part of that losing that Europa League final because he played as an extra striker. And again, against Man City, totally not there, totally invisible, and playing far too far up when all the ball was. He should have come back and actually helped. It's supposed to be, I think that Erik ten Hag is supposed to be 2 8s, which Bruno has been doing against other teams, but for some reason against Man City, he felt like he was, maybe it was because City didn't play with the recognised DM, and he thought, oh, I'll just stay up here and play as 10. But we were totally under the cosh, and McTominay and Eriksen were by themselves, and he should have got back, and he should have been further back. Key opportunities. He was very poor, and that's why, like I said, when I make these changes, it's for these reasons. So, like I said, Casemiro and Fred coming in, obviously for McTominay and Bruno, and I play Eriksen in the 10. A lot of people have also said that Eriksen, I know he does play deeper now for his country, but ostensibly his 10 has always been his position. So I think we should try him in the 10 because, like I said, Bruno is a very much a big issue. And Eriksen, when you're playing with the 10, you don't have to be as concerned with tracking runners. We had a lot of time with Paul Pogba. This was on someone else's tweet. I've just stolen this really, but it was an interesting point, which was that Paul Pogba got a lot of criticism because he never tracked runners. And Eriksen, obviously, for that first goal in particular, and obviously for other subsequent goals, wasn't tracking runners either. But that's because their first thought is an attacking one. And like I said, Eriksen's more of a 10. That's where he played for most of his career. So, of course, he's not going to be the best at tracking runners. So, like I said, I'd play Eriksen in the 10. Anthony, I'd give an opportunity on the right. Fantastic goal. Play Rashford on the left because I think Sancho has been poor for a little while now, and that would give him a kick up the arse. And then Martial, I think, with that cameo, deserves to play up front. And I feel like he is going to really improve us quite a lot because, like I said, I'm quite a big fan of Anthony Martial when he plays because he's excellent, obviously, at hold up. You could see that even against, I know obviously he said he weren't trying as much, but you can just see the difference when the ball went up to Martial, he just sticks. He actually knows how to play with his back to go on like Rashford. And he still creates things, and we looked a much more potent threat with Martial, albeit though the game was gone. But like I said, even still, City obviously actually had opportunities to obviously and did concede because Martial was just a lot better in that striking role, so he'd play up front. And that's kind of what I want to see against Everton, because the myth, obviously, of this age-old adage that Erik ten Hag's keeping, which is, I've got to keep the same team because it's a winning team, which he's done for the last 8 weeks, whatever it is. That's all stopped now. So now we can actually start seeing maybe Casemiro coming in, actually being integrated in the team. I know he's not Erik ten Hag's cup of tea because he didn't really want him. He wanted Frankie de Jong, but he needs to come in because we do need a screen in front of that defence. And we do need to start changing things. And as I said, that will be my team moving forward. Whether we do or not, of course, remains to be seen. And my very final thing, obviously, on Ronaldo is that I kind of agree with Roy Keane. They shouldn't, if they weren't going to use him, they shouldn't have actually kept him because it's just a bit silly, really, to keep him just languishing on the bench after making all those subs. My favourite player of all time always will be Cristiano Ronaldo, and we should have just let him go. No point keeping him. But we probably, to be honest with you, I'm probably going to let him go in January anyway. That wouldn't surprise me to a Champions League team, whoever that might be. It might even be your guys, Josh. It might even be Chelsea, obviously, with Todd Bowley being a certified fan of him. So yeah, it's a real shame for someone of Ronaldo's talent. But obviously Ten Hag made up that excuse about, I don't want to see someone of Ronaldo's career having to face all that horrific match. But he was quite happy to put Casemiro on, who's also won 5 Champions Leagues and multiple other trophies. So yeah, I didn't really necessarily buy that. I think Ten Hag, like I said, he just doesn't feel like him and Ronaldo is a happy marriage. And unless he starts, I think we should start using Ronaldo a bit more if we want to keep him. That's basically Ten Hag's got to think about this. He either starts using Ronaldo more if he wants to keep him, maybe in like Europa League matches or other matches and stuff like that. Or like I said, if he's planning not to use him for the rest of the season, just let him go in January.
Yeah.
Could I just add as well that James Maddison has just scored for Leicester. They have beaten Forest 1-0.
Henderson in the mud.
Again, yep.
Yeah, so it was a deflected goal, but too far of it. Leicester deserve that. Leicester are completely destroying Nottingham Forest.
One last gasp for Brenda.
It's the first thing they've destroyed all season.
Probably the last as well.
Leicester all over Nottingham Forest, so that leads not to get the So let us move. So let us move on to the other Premier League games. Then it starts off with Everton getting a massive win on the road against Southampton, when it 2-1. George, Everton, even though they've drew 4 games, they're unbeaten 9-7 in all competitions. They're looking like they're not going to be in a relegation. Frank Lampard's getting some good shins out of his team. They've signed well. They've got a good defence.
Mm-hmm.
They're not actually looking that bad. It's a really, really good win in front of them, even though Southampton were pretty bad. What do you think about Everton? Do you think Everton are pretty much... Do you think Everton are doing quite well now? Because everyone said Lampard was going to be the first manager sacked, and there's 2 managers gone ahead of him, which almost took on Bruno Lodge and Scott Parker.
I think he's quite lucky, actually, Frank Lampard. I've never, he was a phenomenal player. Let's just say that. Even as a Man United fan, I think most people just agree that he was a brilliant player. But as a manager, there's maybe a slight lacking. I feel like his sort of his ability as a player, and obviously he's also quite an intelligent guy, as we know as well. But it feels like
interrupt you, but Laster.
Okay.
Harvey Barnes.
That's poor for Forest, but still a long way of the season to go. And interesting enough, that's kind of what I'm going to say about Everton as well, which is that I think Frank Lampard and Everton have been quite lucky, maybe with the fixtures they've had recently. Southampton, I know, are a team that a lot of us sort of picked to at least flirt with danger this season. And again, they're a team that are very inconsistent and can lose to absolutely anybody at any given point. And again, Southampton, even though Everton did win, Jordan Pickford was called into action quite a bit, and it was also again relying on the fact that Southampton, again, which we've spoken about. To be honest with you, I could tend to say the same thing about all these teams, which is that no recognised goal scorer. They've got this lack of a clinical cutting edge, which again cost them. There was a massive scramble again, which obviously Everton repelled. Lack of finishing accuracy, which again could have cost Everton dearly. Obviously, Cody, which again Reece sort of spoke about him glowingly, got his first goal for Everton. Obviously, McNeil, superb finish as well. That was a really, really good goal. But it almost feels to me as well that any team that's sort of sponsored by JD Sports, which obviously the Southampton are. Previously, it was fucking Norwich. It feels like it's almost just.
I guess it was before then as well.
The
Brighton when they had that shocking season. And
right, okay.
You
as well.
It's cursed. That sponsor is cursed.
It was just something I noticed, like I said, as I was watching the highlights, and I just thought it was quite funny because every time I see that sign, it's normally a shit team that are playing.
Yeah,
so it's just quite funny. But as I said, lack of cutting edge, good goals for Everton, but to be honest with you, and obviously Pickford again is such a big player for them. He saves them so often, obviously, as he does England as well. Obviously, in the international break, we saw how much England missed Pickford as well in a key moment with what Pope did towards the end of that game, which was criminal. Hopefully, Maguire never gets picked for England either again, just as an aside. But as I said, good result for Everton. But again, obviously, in terms of them feeling like Everton are going to be finishing quite high this season, I wouldn't say that whatsoever. I think this is just a lucky sort of run of results for them, and I feel like they'll start sinking again. We know what Frank Lampard's like. We know also as well, to be fair to Lampard, we also know that Everton do have a lack of quality in their team, and I feel like there will be some poor moments ahead. And as I said, I still think come the end of the season they'll be flirting with at least relegation in the last few matches.
Come over to you, Reece. We speak about this guy Hassan, who told time and time again. He gets good results. He gets a couple of results, and he's back down the ground. First of all, his home, Southampton's home form under Hassan, who told us nowhere near good enough. At home, they are awful. They do seem better away home than they are away home. Their statistics still aren't that great. It just makes you think, he's got the squad, they've shown they can do it. He just needs to find consistency, doesn't he? And you feel like there's only a certain amount of time he'll have before this inconsistency kind of makes him out of a job. Clearly, the owners are keeping them on because they can see what this team can do, but just not doing it good enough. And I thought their attitude and their quality against Everton was extremely poor.
I think they're trying to do everything they can, except bar a few players that are doing everything they can to force him out. I think only a handful of that squad genuinely care. I think Aribo cares. reflected by his goal, well taken goal. I think Bella Kotchap cares because if it wasn't for Haskell, Bella Kotchap wouldn't have got that Germany call up. I think Kyle Walker-Peters as well, right back. I think he genuinely cares. He's just not got enough quality. I don't think Maitland-Niles is a good player for them. I think he's dog shit.
Awful.
I think Ward-Prowse hasn't been the best recently. I think Che Adams, I agree. Like, the man couldn't score for Scotland. He can't score for Southampton. But then again, it's reflection because we don't need them anyway. But I just look at that squad and I think some of them genuinely care and some of them just don't. I think, with all due respect to Hasenhüttl, he's still a decent manager. I feel sorry for him. He doesn't get enough backing from Southampton in terms of proper funding spent on him. But Bayer Leverkusen are looking for a manager. Thomas Tuchel's turned it down. If anything, I put my name in the hat and apply for the job. Like, no disrespect to Southampton, but I think he should just go. Like, I think he's taken him as far as he can go. He should go back to the Bundesliga, set out with a club like Bayer Leverkusen or fighting out in Europe. If anything, at least he can still show that he's still a good manager, and at least he'll get some decent backing, a better squad. And I think Southampton really need to go back to basics. I think the fact that they keep resorting to the 4-4-2 isn't helping them. Aribo's not a left winger, but he was having to play there just to get him in the team. And frankly, Maitland-Niles shouldn't be in there. Aribo should be in that role. I think the system's wrong. I think they need to look at that. I said at the start of the year that Southampton's 4-4-2, like, even though it works for them at times, it needs to change. I think they should switch it around. I think they should look to maybe a 3-4-3. I said it like they should revert to a 3 at the back because it's better for their wing backs. I think Kyle Walker-Peters, he can attack and defend. But I actually think he would be better as a wing back personally. I don't know much about Larios, so I can't really comment, but I think Maitland-Niles has already done the job as a wing back at Roma. I think he would actually be a decent role out there. Coletta Carr, he's average.
Meh.
I think Marseille are happy that they got rid of him because they've got better there anyway. But I think, if anything, enough of talking about Southampton, because I'm looking at the squads as well, and there isn't generally anything there. I mean, looking at the substitutes, for example, Adam Armstrong came on. He's shite. Elyounoussi, shite. Edozie, he's a decent player, but he's a young lad. And Perau, frankly, I would have brought in Gineppo. I think, or even Walcott. I would have made an attacking change. I wouldn't have brought on Perraud unless he's decided that his defenders are shit. He's went for it. I don't think Bazzanu's not been great for them either. I mean, he's not a bad goalkeeper. I just don't think he's settled for Southampton. I don't think he's settled at all. Whereas Everton, Frank Lampard's keeping it nice and simple. Like, they're playing the 4-3-3. The players are comfortable. Gana Gay, he's came in. Yes, he's got a booking, but he plays that role really well. He holds it well. He holds the position really well. You can see from his time at PSG, he's got more experience in the role. He's more comfortable with him without the ball as well, even though he's a natural destroyer. I think Alex Iwobi is actually settled into a box-to-box role really well. I think that's quite funny. It's like same with Joe Linton at Newcastle. Like, some players just aren't cut out for the role they're bought for. Find something for them. They could have sold Iwobi. They decided to put him on the left side of a midfield 3, and it's generally worked for him. He's played some really good football. I think Onana's, even though he came off, he's been one of Everton's better players. I think Demarai Gray was decent. I thought Neil Maupay, even though he didn't score, he's doing what he does best. He's just pissing centre-backs off. And Dwight McNeil, good goal for him. Very good goal. I thought Cody's goal was good. Tarkovsky settled. Mikolenko, impressive. And Seamus Coleman, he's only in the team because Patterson's injured. But he was actually quite comfortable at right back. He didn't have anything to do that entire game. And Pickford, exactly what George said. Like, he was called into action a few times, but he's shown why he's consistently picked for England as the number one. Decent goalkeeper. And then I'm just looking at the bench, like who's came up. Like, I'm looking, like, Rondon came on. Tom Davies, I'm surprised he's still a professional footballer. Decore came on. He doesn't put. I don't think I've ever seen him realistically put a foot wrong in an Everton shirt. Decore, he always seems to do the job. He always scores crucial goals when you need them. He didn't in this game, but he does. And Gordon as well came on. Good for him. Like, he's a quality young player. I think he's got a decent future at Everton. I'm glad he didn't go to Chelsea. In a way, not because it's Chelsea, but I'm glad he didn't go because I think he would have fell into the rubble like Ross Barkley. I think he would have faded in the fold. I'm actually glad that he stayed at Everton. He came off the bench. He settled into the role. And he was an even bigger threat to Southampton than Neil Maupay was, to be honest, in terms of just causing them problems. But other than that, good result for Everton. And a crucial win away from home. Everton are doing exactly what they need to do. Frank Lampard's keeping it simple. Funny that he couldn't do it Derby, but he does it Everton. Funny that. But Southampton really need to make massive changes, and I think one of them is Hasenhüttl. I think he needs to demand money in January. If he doesn't get it, then he should go. I don't think he should stay out the rest of the season. I genuinely feel sorry for him, but system-wise, he needs to look at it. I think they could do better by making a system change.
Well, I agree, like, the main thing I also, before we touch on anything, Leicester are 3-0 up now. James Maddison scoring again. Absolutely hilarious.
The Nottingham Forest are now got minus 14 goal difference and are rock bottom of the Premier League. It's a bit worrying for them at the moment, but yes, anyway.
Just don't stack Steve Cooper, otherwise you're going straight down. But Southampton, out of all the 20 squads in the Premier League, I would say they have the worst out of all. Just like, as you guys alluded to really, when Hasenhüttl first came in, their squad was decent. They had ways to go. They had new owners coming in, but ever since the new owners are in, yes, things may have happened over COVID, but there's just been no investment. There's just been a lot of sales, and I don't know what it is about South Coast clubs either, but boy, do they burn through strikers. We've seen it at Bournemouth. We see it at Southampton now. Just class strikers who score loads of goals in the Championship come up to the Premier League, or also from abroad as well, coming into the Premier League for these South Coast teams, and just absolutely blank. Che Adams, Neil Maupay, Adam Armstrong, just the list goes on and on and on. But for me, I definitely see Southampton going down without any investment to this team. Like, if they retain this squad for the rest of the season, 100% getting relegated. They have the worst squad on paper for me. Hasenhüttl needs to get out of there. They're not going to back him in January. I think to save his reputation, he needs to go as well. And just as Reece said, 4-4-2 isn't working for them. If they get another striker in, the curse is going to continue. And I don't know. He needs a rebuild from top to bottom for me, massively.
I think they're missing the trick. Aribo's brilliant in a further advanced attacking role. They're missing a massive trick because that's where he plays his best football for England.
So moving on, and this is a game where I know George is absolutely... George knows exactly where I'm going with this before I even mention what the game is. Liverpool 3, Brighton 3.
Oh, yes.
So Brighton, obviously, Trossard's going to hat-trick, 2-0 up early on. Liverpool bring it back 2 each, then take like 3-2, and then Brighton equalise. They go 3 each, they come away with a draw. It was just so much to digest about this game of football. Obviously, particularly on the Merseyside side. I know George last 2 times, but we'll start with George. I know he'll have a particular individual in that Liverpool defence to talk about. He's already ahead of that. So let's start off with Nathan. Nathan, yeah, Liverpool are looking bad. Offensively, they're still looking okay, but defensively, it's like going back 3-4 seasons ago before they signed Van Dijk. They look atrociously bad defensively.
Yeah, I do remember when they were just absolutely leaking everything before they had to just absolutely splash on Van Dijk. Take Van Dijk out of that Liverpool team. They are absolutely abysmal. And even now that he dropped form, awful. And I say it all the time, but when is this going to register with Liverpool supporters that Trent Alexander-Arnold is the most overrated player in the Premier League out of everyone? In fact, I've said it for 3-4 years, and I've said it since the podcast has even started. Trent is not a right back. Sorry, he is not a right back. He should be a midfielder. His defensive quality doesn't exist. Even a winger, quite frankly, he's so good at whipping everything in. He's so good at assisting other players, but what he's actually meant to do, being a defender, he's a right back. Like, what do you expect from right back? He's in defence. What should he do? Defend. He cannot do that. I have seen the man live 3 times. All 3 of those times, he was completely abysmal. In fact, he got sat down by Josh Murphy 4 years ago? He's now playing in League One.
He got sat down by an out of form Marcus Rashford.
Exactly. That's all that needs to say it to you. And yet, all the Liverpool fans, I'm not saying them all, but the vast majority of Liverpool fans are literally worshipping the ground that he lives on and are still saying, oh, he's the best right back in the world. Oh, he was in Team of the Year for the Premier League last year. Absolutely no way. and they're saying he should be first choice on the England team sheet for right back. No, get real. Get real.
If he goes to Qatar, it's probably as a ball boy. Like
It must
he
be.
is like all due respect. I've slated Trent for years. I think he's genuinely shit. I think he's massively overrated. He's completely shit. And my gran can defend better than him, and she can barely move. So like she needs a stick to operate, and that's with respect to my gran. She would defend better than Trent. Trent has no killer instinct when it comes to defending. He's got none of that. Like you see defenders like Kyle Walker, he knows he's got killer pace. Sometimes he will make an odd mistake. But see when he does make a mistake,
everyone makes mistakes.
When Kyle Walker makes a mistake, for example, you immediately see it in his face. You see it come out of him. There's aggression in there. He gets angry. And what does he do? He runs like fuck and he puts in a slide tackle. He wins the ball back. And 9 times out of 10, a counter-attack, City bloody score. Trent Alexander-Arnold goes for a tackle, probably breaks his leg anyway. Yep. He does not do anything for me that strikes him as a good player. I genuinely think he has given people false hope. Like if you want a career in professional football, you don't aspire to be Trent Alexander-Arnold. He should be in Hollywood, like winning an Oscar for being a footballer, because he isn't one. Same with other players as well. And I don't care if Liverpool fans are watching this because they need to be told. Mo Salah's shitting off. Like bloody Sadio Mane is clear of him. And I had people tell me last year, oh, he's a Ballon d'Or. He's going to win a Ballon d'Or. He does this, does that. First 6 months, Salah was decent. The last 6 months, Sadio Mane won the AFCON. Sadio Mane knocked our king out of the World Cup qualifiers. Yep. Sadio Mane is now going to be one of the favourites to win the Champions League with Bayern Munich, depending on how the season goes.
I will say as well, with the Sadio Mane thing, the reason that Mo Salah was so good was because of how solid that front three was. Mane was supplying everything to Salah. That strong midfield of Liverpool that Jurgen Klopp, even with Henderson, Milner, Wijnaldum, just how he made that gel and get the delivery through to Salah was just perfect. That's why they made him such a good player. But individually, when he doesn't have that service, like we see it with Egypt as well, he's just your normal winger, to be honest. He is world class.
He isn't enough for me.
He's not the next level. He's nothing near Sadio Mane. Like Mane did it amazingly for Southampton. We all saw that. That's why he got the move to. That's why he got the move to Liverpool. Yes, Salah did it with Roma. He had the players to reinforce it with him, but that's why he was only sold for, what was it, £35 million?
Yeah.
35, 40 million. Yeah, he comes to Liverpool, gets slotted in a superb team. The void was filled. Sadio Mane at left back, superb. Roberto Firmino as a false 9, superb. Midfield, slowly getting there. The signings were going to come over time. Your Thiago Alcantaras. I don't know what that accent was then, but we'll leave that to one side.
Keep going.
But it was still strong from there. They had the service coming in from Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold. But when that goes, when Liverpool aren't on full form,
they're very easy to beat. And I know this is saying a lot because how well their points, their average accumulation of points has been the past couple of years. But you look in certain games, when they go a goal behind, I can't remember the last time they won a game where they conceded first. And that says a lot. Like once you get in behind them, they're so easy to beat. And it's the same with Man City. You break Man City's first press, you've got them. You just need to break down Liverpool. Liverpool right now are not in the best of form. Fantastic. But when you look at some of the quality of these players, there's no excuse. Like there generally is no excuse. Like their midfield, starting the game was Thiago, Fabinho, and Henderson, and only Fabinho survived. Firmino scores twice, comes off. Carvalho comes off, and Tsimikas comes off.
I won't say Carvalho is so overrated though.
But I'm looking at the rest of their team, and it's generally not great at all. Like Van Dijk gets so much praise for having a 2-year prime. Like he is generally not that good. He's generally not. The last time I saw him, he was that good was probably like 3 or 4 years ago. He's completely regressed. He's not the best of form. I think for a period of time, if Liverpool really want to start getting results, it needs to be Konate and Matip. I don't think Konate's actually got a foot wrong for them. I think Matip's reliable as hell. Trent needs to be replaced, but then again, Calvin Ramsey is not there yet. And
Trent needs to be. He needs a Neil Warnock. Like I know I'm comparing it to a Cardiff City moment, but who remembers Callum Patterson?
Oh,
I've
don't
got to
remind
put
me.
this reminder out there. When he
Don't
joined the
remind
club, he was a right back, just like a certain Mr. Trent Alexander-Arnold. Warnock comes along to him after
Come up
2
front.
abysmal performances, saying, "Look, you can't defend. You're never playing as right back again. We're going to try you in midfield." Look where he ended up.
Make
Bang,
him up front.
Premier League, scoring goals.
He was playing as a striker for my country 3 years ago. Don't remind me.
Exactly.
Don't remind me of Patterson. But that's
Exactly.
the thing. That's the
This is
reflection
what
of
Trent
Liverpool.
needs.
Here's a question I have: does Trent have complacency as the right back, knowing he has no competition, knowing that he's the only right back, no matter how bad he plays, there's no one to replace him in that thing?
Yeah,
I think
We do see
he's done the one. I think
We
Trent
do-
Alexander-Arnold has done the most criminal act in football. He has bought into his own hype.
I
He's
agree.
bought into his own hype and look at his performances.
Like,
And that is a reflection. Like another player is about to bite him in his arse for his comments. Dean Henderson. Dean Henderson's a decent goalkeeper. He's not a great goalkeeper. Look at the comments that he's been making about himself and about Man United in the summer. It's come back to bite him in the arse because he's bottom of the league.
and he's
This
got a minus 14 goal difference in the league.
the thing I like to add
Trent
about Trent.
has bought in. He can do. I agree. Like he can whip a ball and he's decent from a set piece. But that's it. I think if you really want to get the best of him, you put him in midfield. I've said it on this podcast so many times. He is actually a decent player for a midfield, but he's not the type of player you want for a fullback because I don't care if you have to trap up and down and defend, like attack, but you're expected to defend. You really can't, and that is a worry. Not for me. I don't care.
Another thing I'd like to add to that is that Reece sort of touched on a bit earlier was ever since Trent has been introduced into that Liverpool first team, who has been his competition the whole time? Nathaniel Klein? Nico Williams?
James Milner, Joe Gomez.
James Milner? Just
It's
there's
crazy.
been no one there to actually pressure him because remove Trent Alexander-Arnold, move him into midfield, for example, put a proper 30-40 million pound right back in that side. In fact, the majority of Premier League right backs from, let's say, 12th in the table up, those right backs get in the team any day over Trent for me on a defensive level, which is just, yeah, Reece James is clear.
Cancelo exists, mate.
And Cancelo as well.
I just think there's so
Trent.
much that's seriously embarrassing. He is one of them. I think Cancelo can do both things. Reece James can do both. Kyle Walker can do both. I'm just looking at overall, and Trent can only do one thing. And it doesn't matter if you play for Liverpool. It doesn't matter if you play for Port Vale. It doesn't matter if you play for Bayern Munich. It doesn't matter if you play for Real Madrid or even like Milan or Juventus. Your fundamental role in midfield, your fundamental role is to be able to supply the attack and protect your defence. In defence, your fundamental role is to protect your defence, like your goal from actually bloody conceding. And then if you're a winger, a fullback, you track your fullback's run opposite him and you track the winger. And you do it from there. If you play as a striker, it's simple. You stay around the 18-yard box, get your fucking head on it and get a goal. Trent does not seem to understand his role. Half the time, he is actually fundamentally trying to play as a wing back in a back four when he shouldn't be. And he's another thing as well. He's a victim of the fact that he is the system players.
Yeah,
you cannot find him in an unconventional. You can't put him in an unconventional role. It has to be a system. And if with Klopp, like he likes to play as a system, but it's very unconventional, and it's not as fluid in that way that Trent wants it to be. And I'm not saying Klopp's football isn't fluid because it is. It's just not fluid where he is expected to do both roles and he can't do it because if you put Reece James in this Liverpool team, Liverpool win the league. You put Cancelo in this team, they win the league. You put Kyle Walker, they still win the league. They've only won one league title, but apparently this is the best team since sliced bread. But they finished behind Man United 5 times. But there's a fact. But I'm just looking at it. There's so many problems with him. It's not just him though. It's not just him, but he is a fundamental problem. And until Liverpool fans recognise it, keep watching us slight him.
Another thing that I would like to add, moving away from Trent Alexander-Arnold a little bit, is aside from that Brighton game where they did end up coming back, when teams start to overload Liverpool or have broken down their defence, it's game over. We've seen it with when they lost to Fulham a few years ago. We saw it. Who remembers? What Champions
Villa
League was it?
7-2, their arse went.
Villa 7-2 is another one. The floodgates just opened. Liverpool could not close it. What was it? Roma in the Champions League when they were 5-0 up, and then they started to let the goals in. When the floodgates open, they cannot shut it at all. And that is one thing that will constantly hinder Liverpool.
Mm-hmm.
When the defense is solid, it's great. When it's open, Liverpool are finished.
I think one big issue with Liverpool is the midfield also is not anywhere near as good. Arthur clearly isn't going to get a single sniff into this Liverpool team.
So like that's Klopp's choice though, and you know what, they deserve it. They deserve it. So he chose to look at the midfielder.
They all want
George,
yeah.
George, very quickly, you want to speak your piece on this before we move on?
Yeah, obviously Trent Alexander-Arnold, fourth best English right back, behind, depends on what your order would be, but obviously Reece James, Kyle Walker, and Kieran Trippier. Ultimately, all of them are better than Trent Alexander-Arnold, and that's there's no need. I think, to be honest with you, though, as well, I know Liverpool fans have hyped Trent Alexander-Arnold, and which they have done for many years. But I feel like a lot of Liverpool fans now are actually waking up finally to the fact that he might not actually be that good. I've seen a lot of them as well turning against him now because they realise that in crucial moments he's just not good enough. It's one of those things where it's a bit like sort of breaking down a wall. I think they've got sort of this wall of defence, Liverpool fans, where Trent Alexander-Arnold's concerned, where he can do no wrong. He's seeing again, which is sort of hyped up a bit by the media as well, who always loved with an English young player who shows even a modicum of talent. There's always this idea that again they've got to hype and embellish his talents, which is something that Trent's again has suffered from over the past few years. And as I said, people are now starting to wake up. The Liverpool fans in particular, like I said, I would just give them credit with that. But like I said, it's been a long time coming. Like I said, it's just like a wall someone's just been chipping away at slowly, and finally, like I said, some of the ideas are sort of seeping through to them that maybe Trent isn't the be all and the end all. Every single week, it's the same with him. Really, there's always some errors or mistakes. Yeah,
agreed.
Jurgen Klopp in particular was actually fielding, ironically, quite a few questions about Trent's lack of defensive capability, because finally the media have finally cottoned on to it years after after fans of opposition teams have been saying it for years, and they're finally, like I said, cottoning on to it, which that happens all the time. Really, it happened with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as well, years and years in the making, that sort of stuff. But it was quite funny because he sort of fielded the question. He said that, which I do kind of agree with, but he sort of was quite selective, which is that, again, sort of speaking about the system, is that he deliberately has Trent Alexander-Arnold pushed up, which can lead to these. Obviously, he's sort of saying these minimal occasions where he's caught out of position and it looks worse than it is. The issue, though, for Trent Alexander-Arnold is not so much those goals; it's the ones where he actually is in position. And it's the ones where he loses his man or does something silly. And obviously, in the Brighton game, you saw that specifically on the goals. You saw that obviously the first two goals, you saw that he was actually in a position to make a defensive challenge. He was all the way back where he should be, but still errant decision making, lack of composure, and just general poor defensive play. And he can't defend that. Again, you see a lot of lazy people as well saying that. A sort of misconception, which you can tell someone doesn't know ball, is if they think that Trent Alexander-Arnold can't defend. That accounts, that's just absolute rubbish. Because, like I said, he just cannot defend. That's just a fact. Moving on from him, like I said, because
good place to you, mate. Sorry, Conan. You know what's funny? How you said there, people say like, "Oh, he can defend," and then they go after people who says they can't. Have you noticed when you ask them name me situations where Trent has defended, you can't think of a single one?
Yeah.
Because I have never seen him once put through, like, actually defend. Like, it's people around him. He's just, because he's on the ball, they think, oh, Trent's actually finding a way to tackle it.
That's actually just reminded me as well, just a final point before I move on to my very final point in a second, about which is slightly away from Trent, which is my final point on Trent, is that building on that same thing, is that not only will they not provide you with an example, but actually Liverpool fans are getting into such a state about him that they will automatically blame other players. So, for example, on the goal that obviously Real Madrid scored in that Champions League final, as we all know, Trent was sleeping, which allowed Vinicius just to have an easy tap in at the far post. And yes, there were other players involved in that from a Liverpool standpoint who didn't do well enough. Van Dijk obviously standing off and so forth. But the player they went really far after the Liverpool fans on that goal, despite the fact, like I said, the final result is Trent, missing his man and cutting it off, was Andy Robertson. They were saying that obviously because he pressed high up, which he did. But we all know that Liverpool do that. They all know they pressed it because he pressed too high up and obviously left Valverde to himself on the right hand side. They went in on him so much, and it was just, looking back now, even a few months later, like I said, because a lot of them are now realizing that he's not good enough. It's just funny to me that how far, how big and how thick a wall you have to build up. Of this idea of protectiveness around Alexander-Arnold. That's just an example of that delusion in some ways, but. The final thing I want to say about Liverpool, again, you guys obviously covered bits and pieces about other players and that sort of stuff, is that midfield, which you sort of spoke about, Josh, as well. Henderson and Milner, I think both of those players are sort of, unfortunately, now are getting old, and they were never the best technicians, but what they always had was heart, desire, and leadership. And unfortunately, when they're late, the mind is sort of willing, but the body's not giving. And that's ultimately what the case is. I think Henderson in particular was integral for Liverpool's, because obviously they did have success, as Reece sort of said, was only one Premier League title, but they were still obviously had success in the Champions League and so forth. And Henderson was a big part of that. Actually, despite the fact that he played probably the worst game I've ever seen for any England player ever in that 2018 semi-final against Croatia, where literally every ball he didn't hit a single pass correctly, but for Liverpool, he's actually been exemplary over the years, and but now he's just it just seems to me that even on that third goal, it's like fucking hell. There's Milner in the picture. It's just these players are just not good enough now. And I know that obviously I've been watching sort of some of Doug's things as well, and he was sort of saying, especially about Milner, he's like, why is Milner still starting games, or why is Milner still? And that's the issue, is that these players, unfortunately, Milner and Henderson, are too old now. And the new guard, obviously, I am a bit fan of Carvalho anyway, but I feel like there's not enough. They are going to have to invest. I think Liverpool already know this anyway, and that's why they were sort of like, everyone, a lot of their fans were like, oh, we must get Nico Barella, or we must get Jude Bellingham, or whatever it's going to take over the next year or so. But it's because they know there's a dearth in that midfield. They need someone who's a real engine, who's going to sort of make up for what ultimately, like I said, they're not the best technicians, but Milner and Henderson just give you so much in terms of leadership and like instructions and so forth. And yeah, that's where they need to look at primarily. Obviously, again, Van Dijk has been very poor. Obviously, Reece said, 2 years of prime. That's nowhere. That's terrible compared to any other great Premier League defender. But there's a chance for him to get back. I don't think it's he just needs to sort of. It feels like Liverpool are just slightly loose at the moment, and like I said, we've already spoken about Trent. It's a big reason for that. But midfield, I always sort of come back to it. The midfield in so many games is crucial. It's the engine room of your team. You need to get that right. And like I said, at the moment, there's too many passengers in there. I think Fabinho's been quite poor actually as well of recent times as well, and he's been quite crucial for them. But yeah, as I said, it's that Henderson or Milner. You have to have those. If Liverpool are playing a high pressing game and a high energy game, everyone has to be on it. And obviously Trent isn't. But not only that, but the midfield isn't on it either, because, like I said, aging legs. They need someone in there young like Jude Bellingham. Hopefully they'll never get him, obviously, but they need to bring in fresh legs and new signings in that area in particular, which they're fully aware of as well.
I think their dual system change as well. I think this team, like, for all good the 4-3-3 has done for them, I think they need to lose one of the positions. I think they need to look at a 4-2-3-1. I think the team, like you say, about aging legs, I think they need to have a double pivot in there. I mean, it's crazy enough that they've got they brought Arthur on loan. He's not particularly the best, I can say that for a fact. But he brought Milner on ahead of him. I think it says, I'm looking at who actually came on. Like, Milner came on, Elliott came on, Jota, Diaz, and Nunes. There's literally a front, well, to a degree, potential front four you could have as a back. Like, your main front four, for example, should be like Darwin Núñez, Firmino behind them, Diaz on the left, and Salah on the right. And then you've got potential as a backup. You've got Harvey Elliott, and probably in the pivot, to be fair, you've got Darwin Núñez still up front, Jota on the left, and it's just about who you play on that right hand side. I'm just looking at it and I'm thinking, I don't think that he was getting enough out of the press as well. I seem like they're lost with the press as well. Like they're half a yard too back, or they're half a yard far forward. They're not manning their positions really well. And it says it all that out of the 5 substitutions, De Zerbi decided to hell yeah, I'm only going to bring on 3. I think he was generally more confident than Klopp was. I think that's another telling story. His first game in the Premier League, Brighton's first game in about 30 days, and he's decided, you know what, I'm going to bring on Lallana for jokes. I'm going to bring on Lamptey, and I'm going to bring on Mitoma. Could have called him Hematoma, but you're still going to give it. You're still going to give it to Liverpool. And I was actually quite telling that he played a very high pressing 3-4-2-1, very clever. But it says it all that when you look at their brilliant. When you look at their team, I think Liverpool are due a system change. I think the game Brighton played was very clever, very smart, but it's a reflection of the two. And I think Klopp and Liverpool have got away with so much. And yeah, that's true. I think they've got away with so much. Like I think they have. And it's about time that Klopp actually realises if you do not get this change right, your time is running out. Because I've seen a lot of Liverpool fans that want him out as well. I think they are just system change. Whether you like the double pivot or not, I think one of them should be. I think Fabinho and Thiago should be the double pivot, and they need to get their front 4 right. And they should look at the positions at full back. But I don't care. Let their fall continue.
Just obviously we will move on. Obviously, Maisie said to pop in. We should feel very privileged that Maisie's using that last minute data on podcast. We should feel absolute privilege and respected from this moment. I will screenshot this and put it on my laptop as a reminder of how lucky this podcast is. And then obviously there was a lot of talk about
Really in my brain for good.
And there was a lot of talk about Manchester, about Man United, a bit of Bobby Thompson and Bobby the greedy pace merchant. Anyway, so obviously the Premier League games which we're not going to talk to because they're pretty much irrelevant. We don't have the time. So obviously we got Bournemouth 0, Brentford 0. Obviously there was a controversial decision regarding a penalty in that situation. George, what do you think? Do you think the referee got it right by not giving a penalty?
No, it was a penalty.
Well, yeah.
Ultimately has to jump over the player and ultimately has to jump over the player, and for me that's a penalty. But
the Premier is a farmer's thing then, by the
way. It'll eventually go to Real Madrid. I don't know at what age he'll do it, Mbappe, but he will eventually do it. It's written they'll definitely do it unless PSG decide to give him double. Literally they'll sort of make him a king of Paris or something along that.
They'll give him £1 million a week easily at some point.
I know it sounds harsh on a football club, but I really hope they go bust. For that I hope they go bust. Just so we can parade.
Yeah, sadly, I don't think they will. But for me, to come back to that sort of question, definitely a penalty. It was quite surprising, actually, because the referee went to the monitor, and for once, he actually stuck with his original. Normally, when they go to the monitor, it's definitely to give the decision to whichever team, obviously, to reverse their decision, but didn't. Eventually didn't. But yeah, for me, it's a penalty, and obviously in Bournemouth, I think to be fair, Brentford would have come back, and so it wasn't exactly a very crucial time. But from Bournemouth's perspective, that's a really poor decision, and they're still going to want and need points. I feel like moving on from the season in a crucial match. So yeah, I think the ref got it wrong. Penalty.
But that was Gary O'Neill, 4 games unbeaten, so he's obviously putting his stance in for the permanent job. Chelsea beat Crystal Palace 2-1. Conor Gallagher coming back to score an unbelievable strike against his club that was on loan last season. Probably a very, very lucky win for Chelsea. I don't think Chelsea were anything spectacular. Again, I do agree. I think Thiago Silva should be sent off. He thought he was playing volleyball for a minute. It was a clear, deliberate handball which stopped Jordan Ayew from going clean. With.
Can I just say as well, what on earth was Chelsea's formation as well?
3-6.
Graham Potter changed his formation more times than I eat during the day. I don't know. He goes 4-2-3-1, 3-5-2, 4-4-2, 4-3-2. There were other formations, but
according to Google, it was 4-3-2, which is just absolute madness.
What I do know is.
Yeah,
Cardiff have been shit since match day 2 when I told Nathan it was going to happen.
he did. Reese did say, "Well, we'll proceed on to that in a moment. Anyway, I have a lot to say. Let's just say."
But yes, Chelsea were lucky. Obviously, I think it was just written in the stars that Thiago should be sent off the next minute. He says Aubameyang for his first really goal, really good goal, really two good goals. So I think Chelsea scored a great finish by Aubameyang on the turn, bottom left hand corner. You would have seen it. You would have seen that from Lukaku, and then obviously Conor Gallagher's strike was unseeable. Absolutely fantastic.
I've only got one critique of that game. Funnily enough, apart from Chelsea winning, is I think Patrick Vieira went a little bit. I think he got a bit too confident. Yeah, I don't know. Like it was the same with Ten Hag. Like Ten Hag against City, he went with one defensive midfielder and two tens in a system that he shouldn't have done. Patrick Vieira decides to go for a lone DM and two tens, and I'm like, mate, what are you doing? Like I know this is Potter's first game, and he's a fairly decent manager, but like this is against a fairly good Chelsea team. Are you playing suicide watch? Like he got it I think he got it completely wrong. I think he should have played maybe one like an additional 8 in there. I think he shouldn't have went two tens because you could see it in the golfing class in midfield. They got completely swamped. They didn't know how to cope. And I think Vieira, if he had maybe changed it just a little bit, that's a draw, not a defeat.
Just a really quick note. A guy from Warren, he doesn't watch football, so he really had no clue what we were talking about. But he just jumped into my stream and he just texted out this percent that you think I has got a mad stream. So there you go, Nathan. You can go to bed. You can go to bed happy with that. George's face. George's face. George.
Oh wait, Maisie's put the comment of the night in. The comment about Ruben Amorim. We're like, yeah, we agree. We don't want him either, but it'd be funny because that's everything. They've robbed Sporting of their pride. They've robbed them of their best players. They've robbed them of the manager.
So obviously, Fulham beat 10-man. Fulham 4-1. Chalobah with an awful tackle, like an absolute pure.
Complete stupidity. God,
Newcastle beat Fulham 4-1. So yeah, that was pretty much a straightforward result. West Ham beat Wolves 2-0 in the last game. Wolves, I don't think West Ham were that good. I thought West Ham even quite poor themselves, but
they were just clinical.
They were clinical and they capitalised the demoralised Wolves team. That's all you need to say about it, really.
It was good for Skamaka to get a goal. Good for him. Like, honestly,
West Ham were good. West Ham were the best of the two bad teams, but yes, Skamaka's goal was unbelievable.
This is what we said though in last week's show for West Ham. Like it will come eventually. They need a win, but they need to be clinical and they need to be scrappy. And they were scrappy against a team that are known for being little terriers and Wolves. They done the right thing. West Ham. They just got stuck in, and I think the key performer for me was by far it was Skamaka leading the line. Like Skamaka was phenomenal in that team, especially when they drifted out wide as well. Wolves didn't know how to handle him, especially the wing backs. That says it all when your wing backs can't handle a striker.
And the other game was phenomenal between Leeds and Fulham. It was just an absolute fest.
What's the score with mid-table Leicester and
3-0 Leicester?
Still 3-0.
I would like to touch on Leeds Villa. I think just to summarise it quickly, I think that was a good result for Villa to get that, considering the way Leeds have been this season. But if I was a Leeds fan, I'd be disappointed because I thought Leeds were the better team and they should have had it.
They were down to 10 men though. I think it's short down to 10 men probably.
What was the final score?
No.
Yes,
they were. They did go down to 10 men, but I didn't see any threat at all from Villa as much, and Leeds should have capitalised on it really.
I know the result probably would have been different, but whoever decided to put that game at 4:30 over the Manchester Derby on Sunday, it really baffles me about these.
Probably police reasons. To be fair.
Who decided to have a 7:30 kickoff next Sunday for United Everton? So they decided to get rid of the 12:30 kickoff on the Saturday for a 7:30 kickoff on the Sunday. I don't understand.
At least they can watch it on a Sunday night.
United have been a good game, but I'm too busy watching the NFL. So
we need to get a win over that because the game at Goodison Park last year, that defeat was ridiculous. We need to actually we owe them a hiding.
So I was going to talk about the Champions League games, but we're an hour and a half into the stream, and I don't want to keep you guys any longer than need to be. So
I want to know when this quiz is, by the way, because I've got it prepared.
I think what I'll do is I'll do a very quick. We'll do predictions for all the games rather than talk about them in detail. I think that'll be the way. But before we do go into the Champions League, I do want to give Nathan his platform as I always do for Cardiff City. 1-1 draw against Burnley, I believe it was. 50 copies Burnley. Just want to quickly summarize the game and obviously any update on the manager shortlist.
I need to get your guys' opinions on it as well. But long story short, if any of you guys have seen the vlog, which you probably haven't, it was like heads in hand moment for the majority of the game. Just so frustrating. Was changed up to a 4-4-2. Thought Hudson showed an all right impression. Pretty good, actually, to be fair. Callum Robinson finally getting on the score sheet after his absolute disaster against Huddersfield. Burnley, didn't think they offered too much. They took advantages of us at the start of the second half as we were so poor in the first half and then came out with no confidence. But am I okay to have a screen share, if that's all right, Josh, for the managerial situation?
Just in the meantime, I'll look at George's face.
Right. So next permanent manager, Oz. Don't know if you guys can see that.
Yeah.
Mark Hudson. He's obviously he's interim manager at the moment. I'll come back onto him in a moment.
Sol Bamba?
Yeah.
Right.
That goes to show. That goes to show the limited options. Rob Edwards have turned it down. Sol Bamba, he'll be manager of Cardiff one day. Won't happen at the moment because I know that'll just be a disaster. Nathan Jones, he's waiting for the perfect opportunity, not with Vincent Tan. Craig Bellamy won't happen. He's fallen out with Vincent Tan. Scott Parker has turned it down, apparently. Anthony Barry is at Chelsea and assistant. Well, he's one of the coaches. Can't see it. Cole Varane, I believe, has turned it down. Darren Pearce is already at the club. He's the under-23s manager. And then just look at the odds from there. No one wants to manage Cardiff at the moment. It just goes to show, doesn't it, at the end of the day, guys?
I
will say this one thing to add with Hudson, though. Like, at the end of the day, as I've said it the time before, what was the point of getting rid of Morrison when you were just going to replace him with one of his coaching staff? If you're going to sack him for results, why? You'd sack the whole of the coaching staff, wouldn't you? You wouldn't put somewhere else there. It just goes to show that he wants to go for the cheapest option yet again, which just shows the sheer incompetence of the board and how much control Vincent Tan has over. Which the forums have got two questions here. Number one, why is Hudson being given the go-ahead to get another coach? Vincent Tan is allowing him to bring more backroom staff in if he may only be there for just 2 more games. He hasn't even made the decision on him yet, which means Tan just wants to make the cheapest option again, which is just ridiculous. And then number 2, clearly Vincent Tan is highly involved with all the team matters, giving his instructions out all the time. He has every right to do that because he is the owner at the end of the day, but he's not qualified to do that. And not only that, would any decent manager, except someone like Vincent Tan, who has zero footballing background, being thousands of miles away? Bearing in mind, he hasn't even visited the club since 2018. I've just seen that at the bottom of the screen. Josh, I beat you with Aston Villa, mate. No chance. And then why is he interfering with team selection, tactics, and constantly sending messages to the manager during the game? It's ridiculous. No other club operates like that. And to add the final cherry on the cake, everything we've said, the only thing that has come out on the club social media, this absolutely blew my mind the other day. We have opened a second club shop in the stadium. What football team needs 2 club shops in their home ground? Like, oh my God. That is the only thing you've tweeted this week. Who needs a club shop at the front of the ground, which is perfectly suitable, and then one at the back of the stadium? I'm talking a fully furnished club shop. Man United don't have that. Man City don't have that. Liverpool don't have that. No club in the Premier League has that. The biggest clubs in the world don't have that. We must be the only club in the world with, well, you can say 30,000-seater stadium who has 2 club shops. It takes 2 minutes to walk from one end of the stadium to the other. What? who is thinking of these ideas? It's ridiculous. I just want to
least-
touch on you guys what you think
At least
about
if you run, at least
everything.
in one shop, if you run it at the home kit, the next one will have it. So that's all right.
Exactly. It's all this club is driving me absolutely ballistic, and the fact we don't have a manager in, and the South Wales derbies in 20 games time, it's ridiculous. Absolutely
Right.
ridiculous.
I think you should get Mark
Go on,
Warburton
guys.
first.
Reece, George, give me your thoughts on it. I'm gobsmacked at this point.
I
in the game.
didn't watch your game. I didn't watch your game, but I do see the carnage of Cardiff social media. It's a good look at for me on a Sunday. I always have a look on a Sunday. Having my breakfast and all that, like typical Sunday breakfast, and then looking at Cardiff social media for the banter. There is genuine issues at your club, and it does stem down from top down. But even so, in retrospect, that will get dealt with by your fan groups and like your supporters trust. They'll deal with that on the field in terms of the coaching, the players of choice, the somehow fact that you spent $2 million on 18 players, like all of that, which physically you just don't have.
And that he just picked out of thin air as well.
Yeah, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking your managers in retrospect, and I'm not going to be too harsh on them, but those have been employed in the head coach role or the manager role or interim role, they are not getting enough either way. Like even with their managerial credentials, you would expect them to do better, especially get even basic football in. Like in the Championship, you don't have to be a team that plays the high press. You don't have to be a team that plays possession football. Just a simple basic team. Like simplest of systems. If you want to play 4-4-2, you want to play 4-3-3, a back five, back three, do that. The one thing you need to have is players actually understand the basic principles of play, and you don't. And and that's another thing. Like you can have the worst owner in the world, but on the field you can have some decent players, and a manager who may actually know how to get them to play good football. I look
Big
at
example is what was it? Oh, Man United.
Huh? Exactly. We had that. We don't have that now. We've just got a manager who's unlucky and got pumped yesterday.
Exactly.
But you look at it and it's like before that, there was no basic principles of the play. There was no understanding of I actually think Cardiff are better suited to play in a low block. You're just not getting enough output. And yeah, well, the only I'm sorry, but you like Sporting Lisbon and they play a 3-4-2-1. Just a reminder, dear. Just a reminder. But in retrospect, you've got none of that. There's no when I look at Cardiff's team and I can immediately pinpoint 6 centre backs as your team because one of them has to play in midfield. You don't have any control. You're completely strapped for depth.
Yeah.
You're strapped for positioning. Your players don't understand the basic defence organisation. You don't even get well to your attack. And another thing as well, because George will be checking your results in a minute. When you look at how you transition, pretty much, when you look at how you play, back to front, name one player that actually fits your system, because I can look at them and I can name none. Respectfully, I can name none of your team.
I agree. And the only player that does is out injured.
All right then, Skipper. All right, Skipper. In the sense of it, though, I just look at your team and back to front, it doesn't matter how shit your owner is. Whoever's in that job doesn't know how to get that team playing basic football. I think Mark Warburton on that list is actually a decent shout. I think George said he's backing Tony Pulis. I know that's a joke, but at least Tony Pulis would be playing defensive football.
I gotta say, if Mark Warburton has a brain, he wouldn't come to Cardiff.
I think he's something. But I'm looking at your team, and your team's suited to play in a back five or a back three. You can't do any of the other system. That says a lot.
We are going to have to move on.
Go for it, George. Just quickly. I gotta see this.
I know.
As a long-term viewer,
I would just find it.
save me something.
To be honest with you, I just find it funny about that club shop thing. I think that's sort of, as you sort of said, that's really sort of struck me off guard. And all I could think when you said that was, again, sort of, I don't want to plug JD Sports again, but I don't know if you remember quite some time ago, I was obviously I was in there and I saw like sort of last chance to buy, and there was a Cardiff City tracksuit jacket. Which I was really, which I just thought was quite funny because obviously, I sort of live in England and most of the time you don't really see, Cardiff City merchandise. But yeah, so I just thought it was quite funny. But there must be on that sort of front, there must be the demand for it, for them to actually sort of have a second club shop. You guys must be, spending a lot of money in those club shops for them to actually sort of justify that as a business decision. So it must always be full. They must also be looking for ways to make back money as well, which again, obviously, unfortunately, a lot of clubs, ourselves, obviously United included, are very commercially run. To the sense that it's all about sort of making money. And as you said, that's just like almost the straw that breaks the camel's back, isn't it? You sort of see all the issues you've spoken about for many weeks, and obviously I've seen on your vlogs and stuff. And then their sort of solution, their one thing that you see them doing is making another club shop. So, which, as I said, must sort of be a kick in the teeth, really. But yeah, I thought that bit was the funniest bit. But yeah, as Josh said, we sort of need to move on. I do obviously wish you all the best, because like I said, your vlogs are actually a lot more entertaining when you're winning, because I sort of do feel sorry for you every time I sort of see you when it's just miserable. I don't sometimes it's funny on the odd occasion, but obviously when it's repeated over and over again, it's just not nice at all. So yeah, hopefully you guys can sort it out, but as you know yourself, it's going to just be a long and rocky road ahead, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I'm just I'm going to go into the end of the podcast to show you this. I'm going to get ready. But let's move on to our Champions League predictions. Let's fire through these. So we did this last time. I think George actually did quite well on these predictions. I think Greece did decently well too. So let's go. Now, Ajax hosted Napoli, Nathan. What do you think?
Difficult one, but it's Napoli. It's just Napoli, isn't it? I'm going to 2-0.
Reese?
I'm actually going 3-2 Napoli. I mean, Napoli played really well under Spalletti. They've actually been better since they sold Koulibaly. Mignon J's actually been fantastic for them, and United are actually being linked with him now. Apparently, we're looking at his release clause. He's actually a really decent defender, but I think it's too little too soon. I think he needs another year personally, especially because in terms of the top level football clubs, it's the highest he's played for. Especially because right now they are currently top of the league on goal difference, but they've been playing really well. Napoli, Ajax, good team. They do play well within their system, but I think you can put them under pressure, and if you do, you can get a goal on them. Liverpool did do it as well against them. I think Napoli, with the quality they've got, they will cause some serious problems. Just in the back, I still expect Napoli to concede one or two because. But to be fair, Ajax play the ball really well when they're on their own with the press, and there's no way both teams are not going to go and not score. So yeah, 3-2 Napoli.
George?
2-1 Napoli. Yeah, I've obviously been impressed by Napoli this season when I've watched them. Obviously, as Reece has sort of said, I've also seen Ajax as well. So it's two very good teams, but yeah, I think Napoli are just a slight bit better than Ajax at the moment. So yeah, I'm going to give the edge to Napoli in that match.
But I don't like Warsaw fans for me because I called Czechon Philly the during point that was a joint cardinal.
I did see that. That's hilarious.
Hilarious. Liverpool hosts Glasgow Rangers. Can Glasgow Rangers cause the upset at Anfield? Nathan?
I hope Liverpool destroy them.
Fuck you.
Okay, Reece?
I'm going to go 3-1. I do think Rangers will score just to go with what I said earlier, but I'm a Cardiff fan. Of course, I'm going to say Rangers to lose 3-1.
You evil bastard.
Reece, what do you think?
1-0 draw. 1-0 draw.
George?
Yeah. Unfortunately, obviously for Reece and my grandpa, as Rangers fans, I don't think that Rangers are going to get anything. Albeit Liverpool have been crap, but even though they were crap against Ajax at home on Champions League night, they always tend to grind these results out. So I think 3-1 Liverpool.
The only reason that their club is famous is because everyone drives past it on away days. That just goes to show.
Who?
Warsaw.
Oh,
I was going to say.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about Rangers.
No, you're saying Rangers. I'm fucking flying down.
Club re-shows Atletico Madrid.
Ooh, that one might shock you, lads.
1-0 smash and grab Atleti.
I think after they had such a good high weekend, I watched the game. I watched Sevilla versus Atletico Madrid. And Simeone changed his system. He went for a 4-1-4-1. He tried to get the best out of the attacking play. He played Axel Witsel as the lone DM, but Club Brugge have actually come out the Champions League and have actually played very well. I think Atletico, for the quality they've got, you would expect them to get the win here, but I'm not. I'm actually going to go 1-0 Bruges.
I am going to go 2-1 Bruges. A bit like Reece sort of saying, I think Bruges have done very well this season. I also think that Atletico Madrid tend to always somehow scrape out of the group, but they tend to do it a bit later on. So in the last couple of games, that's when they get these manic results. But in the first few games, they tend to take the piss a bit and are a bit lazy and concede silly goals and lose results and stuff like that. So I think that trend's going to continue. So yeah, 2-1 Bruges.
FC Porto hosts a struggling Bayer Leverkusen.
I don't know. Leverkusen in Europe, man. I'm going to go 1-1. I think it'll be tighter than expecting. I think Porto will go into this one with a bit too much confidence. And then I'm going to see it being a stalemate.
Yep. I honestly agree. I think Porto, for all the work they're doing in the league, they're still behind Benfica, naturally. So we're sporting.
Just to say to me, as a McDonald's employee myself, we table services in every single restaurant across the UK. It's not just that one.
Not in all of them. Not in all of them.
Yeah,
Just remember, I used to work there as well, so I know a thing.
Quiet areas.
Table services in most of them, because there's table services in every single one in Northern Ireland.
There's some places where they don't have it just because it just generally can't be bothered. They do it my bit though, but there's some places where they don't. But back to Porto and Bayer Leverkusen. The funny thing is, though, is one of them will, but the other one. I think one thing that's went wrong for Bayer Leverkusen, they've just lost out on a very good managerial candidate. Thomas Tuchel's turned them down. I think they should go and do everything they can to get Ralph Hasenhüttl. I think he'd be a good manager for them. I think getting rid of their manager to a degree, I understand it, but if anything, they were very unfortunate with the fact that Florian Wirtz is still out. He's by far their best player. Diaby's a quality player, but you see the creative link is gone. Pipe down, you. What is this? Home is under the hammer. But I still think looking at them, Florian Wirtz is a big miss from the number 10 role. Diaby, for all his credit, and Patrick Schick, they're really good players, but there's not enough in it really to do what they want to do from their system. And I think I don't think their system's actually tailor-made for some of their attacking players. I think Jonathan Tah and Tapsoba have not been in the best of form, but they will turn up in Europe. I think Hradecky needs to be dropped. I don't think he's as good as people make him out to be. I think he's crap, and I watch the Bundesliga every week. The guy couldn't do well in the Championship. There's a slight honest comment. But in retrospect, I think coming to this game, Porto, good game at the weekend, bit of confidence. But I think Bayer Leverkusen will want to get a result considering the fact the manager got sacked. I think you might see something. So I actually think Leverkusen sneak at 2-1.
Right, George?
Yeah, he's stolen that was basically the score I was going to go with the Leverkusen. Yeah, I'll be Leverkusen 2-1. The reason I'm doing that as well is primarily because I remember we all sort of said with Porto that a while back, obviously another match, they were like, "Oh, they're definitely going to get the result," and that was one of the ones that totally fucked. They got absolutely spanked. So I'm not trusting Porto again for a 2.
And that dive.
Yeah. So 2-1 Leverkusen.
You coach for your pleasant. Yeah,
go on.
Froze.
You froze or not? I didn't even know who you said there.
Yeah.
That was me. Sorry, that's me. All right, Bayern coach Victoria Pleasant.
Goalfest 5-0.
Well, Nagelsmann's finally played the front four that I actually wanted him to in the correct order. He's finally playing Sané and Mane on the wings. He's playing Musiala in the 10 role where he's the best young player in world football for me. And you've got Thomas Muller up front. He's so comfortable in that number 9 role, playing it as he does. Operation of the space, and some players are coming back to injuries as well. Goretzka's coming back. They just had a brilliant result against, funnily enough, Bayer Leverkusen. They battered them in the first half. I watched the game. That that Bayern Munich away kit's absolutely sexy. But in retrospect, Victoria Pilsen, there's a few other clubs I'm going to give a little bit of credit to. I don't think they're going to get royally smashed. Nah, they will. I'm going 6-0 Bayern Munich.
Can I just jump in quick? It's now 4-0 Leicester. Patson Daka.
George, what do you think?
I am going to give Victoria Pilsen a bit more credit, and I'm going to say 3-0 Bayern.
I used to like you, Mr. Kyle. I used to like you.
They're struggling and limping along. Inter Milan take on the kind of getting informed Barcelona. Inter Milan, I don't see them win this. They're struggling, and they're struggling big time in that Serie A at the moment. Nathan?
I think Inter will step up, to be honest, but then I think it's going to take them a bit more time to get their form woes back into line. But it's difficult. It really is difficult. It's at San Siro, isn't it?
It is.
I don't know. Champions League night. I'm just going to say Barcelona edge it 2-1.
I think the fact Barcelona struggled to break down Mallorca at the weekend. All credit, Mallorca were playing a 5-4-1, but even so, the quality that Barcelona had, they're now top of the league on goal difference. They should be doing so much better against a team like that. There is slightly better quality in Inter Milan's team, although they're not in the best of form. I actually think I'm going for a 1-1 draw. I'm going for a 1-1 draw in this game, purely because I think on the counter, Inter Milan have still got some very good players. I think Goshen's is finally settling into the team. Barella's starting to regain his form. Lautaro Martinez has been hot and cold, but he does do fairly well in the Champions League.
Yeah.
And Onana's more or less getting into that first team role. He's starting to take it from Handanovic, as he should. And De Vrij, Maisie's saying he's going to get fired against Lewandowski. I think De Vrij, he will, but then you'll see De Vrij move out. He'll move to the right-hand side, and I think Skriniar will come into the middle, and Bastoni will have a good game. He generally has a good game anyway. But yeah, I think they will. I think it just depends on who plays with Martinez. I think personally they shouldn't go with the front two. I know Inzaghi likes the front two. I think Inzaghi for this game, he should go with a 3. He should go with a 3-4-3. But that really is reflecting of the play itself. I would generally go with that. But yeah, I don't think Barcelona are going to get the job done at the San Siro, but I think they will at the new camp.
And I'm going to go with Nathan's score as well. So I think.
Oh, I got your joke.
So I think 2-1 to Barcelona. Just obviously principally because of Lewandowski.
The French side of Marseille hosts Sporting Lisbon.
2-0 Marseille. You deserve it. Even though I hate them. Now watch me get pelters.
I don't know why. I think it's going to be high scoring.
Nah, I'm only kidding. That's not my score.
I do think it's going to be high scoring.
I think Sanchez is going to run riot in this game, though. He's been in good form for Marseille.
3-2 Marseille.
All right. Since she's now coming at me, now you're getting this. You've got a decent team. I'm going to give you a wee bit prop here. You've got a fairly decent team. You've got some good young players. You've got the best winger in Portugal, and that's Pedro Gonçalves. But this is where things change. Marseille have no injuries. They've got a fully fit squad. What do you have? I'm going... What did you say? 3-2? Or did you say 4-3?
Nathan said 3-2.
3-2. I'm going 4-2 Marseille.
Yeah, Reese, you want some?
No, I don't need any.
I'm going to go for Sporting 2, Marseille 1.
Ooh.
Eintracht Frankfurt host Tottenham Hotspur.
1-0 Tottenham.
I don't know why I have been underwhelmed massively by Eintracht Frankfurt in this Champions League window, considering they after their last performance in Europe, when of course you know well, Reese, I won't say any more.
Your receipts are coming. Your receipt is coming.
I know. I'm gonna edge it 2-1 Spurs. Just Conte getting his revenge from the weekend.
I'm going to say it's 2-0 Frankfurt.
I wouldn't be surprised though, purely because they've got some really good quality in there. I'm just really concerned about Frankfurt's play this year. They've not been the best when I've watched them, but it wouldn't surprise me if they turned up in a game like this because they've got a point to prove.
FC Salzburg host Daniel Zagreb, probably in the fight for the Europa League.
Say that again, sorry.
Salzburg host Daniel Zagreb, and what is probably a big game in terms of who gets Europa League football.
3-3 draw. 3-3.
2-0 Salzburg.
1-0.
You can.
Chelsea host AC Milan.
1-1 draw.
2-1 Milan.
Although, to be fair, the fact that we won 3-1 with no Mainan says it all. So that would actually be careful. And obviously, Rafa Leao's playing, so he might shit the bricks.
Sorry.
You know what? Fuck you. I don't care. You can kick me if you want. I'm going 3-1.
Sorry, Nathan and Rach are suffering technical difficulties.
I think you guys are going to struggle as well, but I.
Okay, so sorry, I can't do that.
You eat shit, boy.
You actually missed what I was going to say, Josh, which is that I think it'll be a draw. So I think it'll be 1-0.
RB Leipzig, the host Celtic.
3-0 Leipzig. Fuck Celtic.
Reese is going to love me 2-1 Celtic.
Goal. Kick him out.
I'm joking. It's going to be Desmond's. It's going to be Desmond's.
Werner's finally come into form, and so is Nkunku.
Yeah, but Celtic are. I think this is a difficult one to call. 2-1 Leipzig.
Sweet dear love, you are on crack.
Real Madrid host Shakhtar Donetsk.
I like
3-0 Real Madrid.
I actually like Joao. He used to play for Benfica, but he plays for a shit club now. Real Madrid versus Shakhtar. You know what? I'm going to go for a crazy. I'm actually going to go 3-2 Real Madrid. I think Shakhtar have got some really good players in there, like Mudrik's in brilliant form, Bondarenko and all that. Like, there's some genuinely good players in that team, and they did actually, although it was painful to watch, they did batter Leipzig. The Shakhtar are still a good team. The fact that they've went away from the Brazilian players and they've went full on, like only a couple of Brazilian players, the rest of the squad's Ukrainian, they're actually going for more homegrown players. I actually respect that a lot because it's shown that they've got more belief in the Ukrainian players considering where things are at right now. Real Madrid have still got the quality in there to edge it, and that's why I said the same thing with Real Madrid against Leipzig, and we had people saying it was going to be a massive battering, but it was tight. So yeah, I've got I do have it being close there. So
3-1 Real Madrid for me.
Okay.
No, Maisie, they're not getting them. And Nkunku's not going to them. It's not happening. Oh, aye, yeah, I called him. I may have said yesterday live on Rich's stream Celtic scum. It kicked off.
Manchester City host Copenhagen.
There's going to be a lot of rested players in this one, let's be fair. For that reason, I'm going to be a bit more conservative. If they played the exact same squad they played against United on the weekend, I would have gone about 7-0. Just because it's Copenhagen, I should say. But I'm gonna leave it slightly conservative. I'm going to go 4-0.
I'm going to agree with Nathan, 4-0.
You really should not have to think about this game, Reese.
It's too tough to call in terms of goals. That's the funny thing I'm trying to get in my head. I'll say just because of how City shut off, like City did shut off right at the very end against us, but mind you, they could have. I wouldn't be surprised if they've still done that in the Champions League, though. They have that typical mentality. It's not going to happen. I'm going to go 5-2 Man City.
Sevilla hosts Borussia Dortmund.
One of them I've done a FIFA career mode with, and I like the banter of Sevilla taking them to a league title, but they're going nowhere. Dortmund are finished. They've ruined Adeyemi. I want to kill them. They've ruined Schlotterbeck. I want to break them. I'm looking at that Dortmund team and it's average. Like, they've only got 3 decent players. Marco Reus is screwed again. I feel sorry for him. I'm going to go for a boring 0-0.
Lopetegui needs to win. I'm going to go 1-0 Sevilla. I can't see Dortmund winning this one.
They are
2-1 Dortmund.
Benfica hosts PSG.
1-0 PSG.
2-1 PSG. Just a narrow away victory.
Yes, 2-1 PSG.
And then our final game is Juventus hosting that Romanian side. Happy or whatever you call them.
Put some respect on them. They've won the competition before.
I just can't say the name. that's
Steaua
it.
Bucharest.
What's your predictions?
Bilderberg to win 3-0. Juventus played a decent game at the weekend. I was surprised, considering the fact that it's Max Allegri and he's not what he used to be. But they're playing players in a proper position. They're actually getting the best out of their attacking play. I think the sit down by the Monza in the Monza stadium was what they needed, even though it was quite a while ago. There's still things missing there from that team, but they've still got fair quality. It's routine. It's Juventus. Fuck them, but it's routine. They'll want to bounce back after getting beat off Benfica as well. So, yeah, I'm going for that. 3-0 Juventus.
I'm going to go 2-1 Juventus. I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
And 2-0 Juventus.
I think putting Kostic as a left winger, not the left wing back, was exactly what he needed as well, because he was brilliant in that role.
Northampton Town versus Suffolk City. Oh, sorry. That's it. Sorry, that's a different
1-0 Northampton.
That's a different podcast.
It's two clubs I really don't care about, so pass.
That's a different podcast. I do. Sorry.
We know.
So I don't. Actually, final game just for the fun of it. Arsenal and Blue Glimt.
3-1 Arsenal.
2-1 Bodo Glimt. I think people look at the teams they've beaten the past couple of years in Europe. I think they can does not just include Celtic. They've beaten Roma as well. They've beaten Spurs as well. They've beaten a few good teams. I think they could edge this one. 2-1 Bodo Glimt.
3-0 Arsenal.
So that brings you into the podcast. I just want to make a very special announcement. A special mention for Jose Mourinho, who's sitting outside the San Siro and his wee fan watching his team win at the weekend. Like, I posted on Instagram while it was live. Like, I thought that Jose Mourinho, I thought that was just great. Like, most managers sit up, in the stands in the press was like Jesse Marshall's on Sunday. I watched the team. If Jose Mourinho was sitting down with his legs up watching on TV and posted it on his Instagram story,
I thought it was brilliant.
And they still won, which is.
I watched that game. Before Milan played Empoli, and I was like, shit, we're going to draw when these bastards scored that 91st minute free kick. It didn't end that way. We won 3-1, but the way that Roma played Inter, like, that is a statement. Like, I genuinely think like Inter Milan are serious trouble, like falling out the top 4. Just like Juventus have got the trouble of staying in it. Roma could get in there. They're not going to win the league, but Roma have got a very strong squad. They've got a serious point to prove. And I think one thing for certain is that's the sort of results we need to do. Like, they weren't getting them last year. The fact that they got it off Inter Milan, who finished second, big result for them. Good result for Mourinho as well.
So, that brings into the show. So, obviously, we'll be back next Monday night to talk about all the Premier League fixtures, all the Champions League fixtures. Maybe Cardiff will have a manager before that. Who knows?
Who knows? Well, we're playing tomorrow, so if anyone, I gotta plug it now. If anyone wants to watch a rant, just watch it Wednesday.
For everybody who obviously, everyone knows I support Glenavon. I don't talk about Glenavon only because no one knows about the Irish League. But here's what Glenavon's stats are. So, and Nathan, you could relate to me. Right? So, Irish League, we've played 7 games of the Irish League so far. Glenavon have won 1 game out of 7, drew 3 and lost 3. We played our big derby against Portadown there on Friday night. Portadown so far this season have won 0 games, lost 7 and drew 0, and we give them their first point off the season after 8 games on Friday night. Glenavon are bad at the moment. So Nathan, I share your pain. I think we do have a manager, but our manager, after he's been in charge of us for 11 years, and I think all these will know, maybe bar a couple, when a manager maybe after 10, 11 years starts to lose that magic that he had when he started at the club, and I feel like that's where it's going at Glenavon right now, because Glenavon are kind of playing, football like you were back in the 2010, 2011 days. As I think we all know, even at the Irish League level, football has just came such a far away. And I'm starting to feel like I want Glenavon.
I will say I have a similar point to that with Glenavon. It was the right decision. So Barry somehow got relegated last season. Probably the biggest club that in the Welsh League got relegated to the 2nd division, which is just criminal. Yeah, obviously they went bust and then straight back up. Gavin Chesterfield, the manager's been in charge for 15 years. He's now on his way out for the exact same reason. And guess where he's going?
Cardiff.
Head of academy at Cardiff City.
That's
yeah, no. I was going to say no one obviously knows anything about Gary Hamilton, but Gary Hamilton, he turned Glenavon from a relegation team into a top 3 team. We've been into Europe twice. We've won the Irish Cup twice, which is the equivalent of the FA Cup. He turned Glenavon into from a team that were basically on the just staying in the Premiership to a team that actually were a contender for top 3 and a very difficult team. Well, it's one of the best academies, but I feel like he's still trying to play football back from the 2009, 2010 days when football just came on, and it's Glenavon just played. Glenavon they've got no defensive shape, and we have forward the ball up to our strikers, hoping for the best, and it's painful to watch. But we've got Loughgall, who's a champion, who's top of the championship in the League Cup tomorrow, and we're probably going to lose, and it's just going to become more and more depressing to support this club. But anyway, as Nathan knows, no matter how depressing it gets to support your club, you support them through thick and thin. No matter how rock bottom you are, you go to every
the thing the Swansea fans tell me about this loads. They're just like, just support. None of your fans support them through thick and thin. Look at the state of your attendances now and how much it's dropped. You can't support through thick and thin when there is no thick.
Nice. All right, so on that final comment, we will end the show. George, any final words from yourself?
No, obviously slightly elongated podcast, but tonight. But we obviously had plenty to go through with obviously that long break, the internationals and obviously the funeral things and stuff. So yeah, good to be back. Obviously, we'll see you guys next week as well. At some point, obviously, we're going to have Reese's quiz availability. Hopefully, again, obviously, Josh will sort of make the decision as channel owner, but hopefully, we can sort of get that organised as well. So that'll be good. But yeah, looking forward to another week of football. Obviously, Champions League. Even though we're obviously not in it, and Europa League, I'll probably, to be honest with you, I'll probably miss the Man United match because I'll be trying to come back home from London, which will be a bit of a shame. But yeah, it's going to be a good week, and thank you very much as always to everyone who tunes in regularly.
Reese, any final words?
That's literally your quiz right there. It's out 74 points, by the way. Other than that, yeah, good show, good audience. As always, engagement was great. I think it's good that even though we're not on Doug's channel anymore, it's a shame. Like, obviously, Doug's busy at the moment, but obviously, he was a miss tonight. Hopefully, he can be on the next one. We'll try and get one for the quiz because he's off next week, so he's got no excuse. But we'll definitely get something out of it, like get the core 5 back, get the involvement of the live chat. We'll get this one stuck in full screen so he can't cheat, although he'll probably be darker than the moon. But if anything, what matters is we've had good engagement. It's good talking about football, and it's good to have a laugh, everybody. And what's next on the agenda is you stop it right now. You just stop being like, stop picking on my teams. Like, I've been generous to your team tonight. I could have said 5-0 Marseille.
And if any more final words from yourself, other than there is no fic.
Don't lose tomorrow.
There's
Please
lots
don't
of
lose
new-
tomorrow. Apart from that, just to make Reese happy, Parkhead's the best stadium behind Cardiff City Stadium in Europe. Celtic over Rangers, and Inter over AC Milan.
Right, one, you don't believe that last part. I know you. You do not believe that last part. That is bullshit. Second of all, how dare you? And three, what? Parkhead?
Yeah.
Eat shit.
Just also keep an eye on my social. I will be making a TikTok for the podcast following Nathan's suggestion. I am going to be making a TikTok. I'm posting some highlights on there. And also, I do have, and also next week is remarks is very special moment. Next Monday's podcast will be a sack mark of our 2-year anniversary of the World of Football podcast.
So we are doing the quiz next Monday then. Excellent.
So
I'm
the quiz will not be that. The quiz will be a midweek. It'll be a midweek thing. It'll be a special. It won't be on a Monday. And Monday is specifically for our football talk. But obviously, it's, the podcast started off as me, Connor, Reese, and there was someone else. I can't remember who it was. Reese, who was the other one?
when this stream started, it was me, you, Doug, Connor Niblett, and then George joined as a guest. Nathan was as a guest. I was a guest as well at the time, and then we all became like just a permanent core group, and that's how it's always been.
Never used TikTok before. Basically, you've used TikTok. Try not to be asked me in my chat, please. So next Monday we'll mark the 2-year anniversary of the World Football Podcast. So there is a quiz coming. The quiz can be a part of it, but we'll have to do something a little bit special for that next Monday. So that ends to the shout outs to you. Massive show. We've done. Thank you everyone for sticking by. Thank you, Macy, for winding up race, because winding up race is hilarious. Thank you, George, for saying. Hopefully,
I love it.
It's good to see you. It's good to see Nathan hasn't been depressed for once. After that, we're going to go and enjoy the rest
just
of the
waiting for
week.
just the compliments, you know.
So everyone enjoy the week of football. I'll be in Dublin on
That's the
Wednesday.
World Cup shirts.
I'm going to Dublin on
Yeah.
Wednesday, so if anybody's in Dublin, please don't queue up outside the train station for my autograph. Don't just saying. So thank you so much for watching. Enjoy, hit the like button, share the stream, and good night. And yeah, goodbye.